You know what's crazy about America? We're obsessed with transformation. We spend over $13 billion a year on self-help books and programs and courses. We set New Year's resolutions every January with genuine hope and determination. We join gyms, we start diets, we launch businesses. We promise ourselves at this time, this year, we're finally going to become the person we've always wanted to be. And yet, here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to admit. 92% of people who set New Year's resolutions fail. 80% of people who join a gym in January quit by February. 95% of people who lose weight on a diet gain it all back within a year. And if you're listening to this right now, you've probably experienced this cycle yourself, maybe multiple times. Maybe so many times you've lost count. Where you start strong, you're motivated, you're committed. You can see the future version of yourself so clearly. And then somehow, some way, you end up right back where you started. Maybe even worse off than before because now you also carried away to feeling like a failure. Like someone who can't stick to anything. Like someone who's just not built for success. But what if I told you that it's not your fault? What if everything you've been taught about change, about willpower, about motivation, about discipline, is fundamentally wrong? What if the reason you keep failing isn't because you're weak or lazy or lacking in character, but because you've been using the wrong system, fighting a battle you were designed to lose from the start? See, here's what nobody tells you. You don't need more motivation. You actually don't need to become a more disciplined person. You don't need to find your purpose or wait for the perfect moment or try harder. What you need is a system, a framework, a set of laws that work with human nature instead of against it. And that's exactly what you're about to discover. Because the book we're diving into today, Atomic Habits by James Clear, has sold over 15 million copies worldwide. And it's not just another self-help book full of feel-good advice that sounds great, but doesn't actually work. This is a book based on actual science, on real psychology, on proven strategies that have transformed millions of lives, including mine. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why you've been failing and exactly what to do about it. Let me tell you a story that's going to make this real for you. A story about a guy named Dave Brailsford who took over British cycling in 2003. And at that time, British cycling was a complete joke. They'd won exactly one gold medal in the Olympics in the previous 100 years, one gold medal in a century. Professional cyclists in Britain refused to buy British bikes because they were considered so inferior. It was a national embarrassment. The team was so bad that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe refused to sell bikes to the team because they were afraid it would hurt their brand to be associated with such losers. Dave Brailsford became the new performance director, and everyone expected him to come in with some revolutionary new training program, some dramatic overhaul, some massive transformation plan, but instead, he did something that seemed almost stupid in its simplicity. He introduced what he called the aggregation of marginal gains, which is just a fancy way of saying, let's improve everything by just 1%. Let's find tiny improvements in every single area, no matter how small or insignificant they seem. So what did he do? He had the team riders switch to lighter bike seats, 1% improvement. He had them wear electrically heated overshorts to maintain ideal muscle temperature, 1% improvement. He used biofeedback sensors to monitor each athlete and customize their training, 1% improvement. He tested different fabrics in a wind tunnel to find the most aerodynamic material for the suits, 1% improvement. He even painted the inside of the team truck white because they realized that tiny dust particles would normally settle on the floor and then get kicked up and settle on the bikes. And the white floor made it easier to spot the dust and keep the bikes cleaner, which reduced mechanical issues. Another 1% improvement. None of these changes alone would make a difference. If you just changed the bike seat, you wouldn't suddenly become a champion. If you just painted the truck white, you wouldn't win races. But here's what happened when all these tiny 1% improvements were combined and compounded. 5 years later, British cycling dominated the road and track cycling events at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing. Then they did it again in 2012 and 2016. They won 178 world championships, 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and they broke 25 world records. And British riders won the Tour de France 5 times in 6 years, something no British cyclist had ever done before in the 100-plus year history of the race. Think about that for a second. A team that was a laughingstock of the sport, a team that could win anything for 100 years, became the most dominant cycling program in the world. And it didn't happen through one massive breakthrough. It didn't happen because they found some secret training method or hired some miracle coach. It happened because they got 1% better in 100 different ways, and those tiny improvements compounded into extraordinary results. And here's the part that's going to blow your mind. The same principle that transformed British cycling can transform your life, your health, your career, your relationships, your finances, everything. Because success isn't about making one big change. It's not about having one moment of inspiration or one burst of motivation. Success is about making tiny improvements consistently, day after day after day, until those improvements compound into results so dramatic that people think you changed overnight, when really you change one tiny degree at a time. But here's the problem, and this is why most people never experience this kind of transformation. We've been conditioned to expect immediate results. We live in an Amazon Prime world where everything arrives in 2 days. We swipe right and get instant matches. We post on Instagram and get immediate likes. We're so used to instant gratification that when we start a good habit like working out or eating healthy or learning a new skill, and we don't see results immediately, we assume it's not working and we quit. James Clear calls this the valley of disappointment. And it's the reason most people never make it. They put in effort for a few days or a few weeks, and nothing seems to change. They look in a mirror, and they still look the same. They step on the scale, and the number barely moved. They check their bank account, and they're still broke. And they think, what's the point? This isn't working. So they give up and go back to their old habits, never realizing that they were so close, that all that effort they put in wasn't wasted. It was accumulating. It was building up behind the scenes. And if they had just stuck with it a little bit longer, they would have hit that breakthrough moment where everything changes. It's exactly like ice melting. Imagine you've got a room that's 25 degrees, freezing cold. You increase the temperature to 26 degrees, and nothing happens. The ice is still frozen. You increase it to 27, 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees. The ice is still completely solid. And you might start thinking the heat isn't working. But then you hit 32 degrees, and suddenly everything changes. The ice begins to melt, and all that effort from 25 to 31 degrees wasn't wasted. It was necessary. It was setting up the breakthrough. You just couldn't see it yet. Your habits work the same way. You might be working out for weeks without seeing visible results, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Inside your body, your muscles are getting stronger. Your cardiovascular system is improving. Your metabolism is changing. You're building toward that 32-degree moment when everyone's going to notice, when even you won't recognize yourself in the mirror. But most people quit at 31 degrees. They quit right before the breakthrough, and they never know how close they were. So here's what we're going to do in this audiobook. I'm going to walk you through the core principles of atomic habits, the exact system that has helped millions of people break bad habits and build good ones. And I'm not going to give you theory or abstract concepts. I'm going to give you real examples, practical strategies, things you can implement today, right now, in your actual life, whether you're trying to lose weight, make more money, build a business, improve your relationships, learn a skill, quit an addiction, or just become a better version of yourself. We're going to talk about the 1% rule and why getting just slightly better every day leads to results that seem impossible. We're going to talk about why goals are overrated and why you should focus on systems instead. We're going to dive deep into identity-based habits and why becoming the person first is more powerful than chasing outcomes. We're going to break down the 4 laws of behavior change, the exact framework you need to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. And we're going to talk about the single most important rule that will save you from quitting when you inevitably mess up, because you will mess up. Everyone does. But the difference between winners and losers isn't that winners never fall. It's that they get back up fast. And I need you to understand something before we dive in. This isn't going to be some raw motivational speech that makes you feel good for 5 minutes and then you forget about it. This is going to challenge you. It's going to make you uncomfortable. It's going to force you to confront the truth about why you've been failing. And it's going to require you to actually do something different. Not just think about doing something different, but if you stick with me, if you actually implement these principles instead of just consuming them, I promise you, a year from now, you won't recognize yourself. You'll look back at who you are right now and think, wow, I can't believe that was me. Because that's what happens when you understand how habits actually work, and you use that knowledge to redesign your life one tiny improvement at a time. So if you're tired of setting goals and not achieving them, if you're tired of starting strong and quitting weak, if you're tired of feeling like you're stuck in the same patterns year after year, if you're ready to finally understand the science of how to actually change instead of just wishing you could change, then buckle up, because what you're about to learn is going to transform everything, not overnight, not through some magic pill or secret hack, but through the simple, powerful, completely unsexy truth that small habits don't add up, they compound. And when you harness the power of compounding, when you commit to getting 1% better every single day, you unlock a level of transformation that most people think is reserved for other people, for people with better genetics or more willpower or luckier circumstances. But it's not. It's available to you right now, today. And it starts with understanding that you don't need to change who you are. You need to change what you do. And more specifically, you need to change the tiny behaviors you repeat every single day. Because those behaviors, those atomic habits, are quietly shaping your future right now, in this moment. And the question is, are they shaping you into the person you want to become, or are they keeping you stuck as the person you've been? Let's find out. Let's dive in. And let's build a life you're actually proud of, one atomic habit at a time. Small habits, big results. The 1% rule. You know what's interesting about America? We're a nation of dreamers and doers, right? Every January, millions of us sign up for gym memberships, dreaming of that transformation we saw on Instagram. We launch businesses in our garages, inspired by stories of Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos. We buy self-help books, download productivity apps, and tell ourselves this is it, this is my year. But here's the brutal truth that nobody wants to talk about. By February, most of those gym memberships are gathering dust, those business ideas are sitting in notebooks, and we're back to our old routines, feeling like failures once again. And the worst part? We blame ourselves. We think we don't have enough willpower, enough discipline, enough motivation. But what if I told you that's not the problem at all? What if the real issue is that we've been taught to think about success in completely the wrong way? See, we've been conditioned to believe in the Hollywood version of success, the overnight breakthrough, the viral moment, the lottery ticket that changes everything in an instant. We're waiting for that one big thing that's going to transform our lives. But here's what James Clear discovered when he was recovering from a baseball bat to the face in high school, an accident that shattered his dreams of playing college baseball. Success doesn't come from one massive breakthrough. It comes from tiny improvements done consistently, day after day after day. This is what he calls the 1% rule, and it's going to completely change how you think about building the life you want. Imagine this. What if you could get just 1% better every single day? Not 50% better, not even 10% better, just 1%. Sounds almost too easy, right? Maybe even insignificant? That's exactly what your brain is supposed to think, because that tiny change doesn't trigger your internal alarm system that says, this is too hard, let's quit. But here's where the magic happens, and this is pure mathematics, not motivation. If you get 1% better every single day for 1 year, you don't end up just 365% better. You end up 37 times better than when you started. Think about that for a second. 37 times better. That's the power of compound interest, but applied to your habits, your skills, your entire life. And it works in reverse too, which is the scary part. If you get 1% worse each day, if you let those small bad habits slide, thinking it's just one day, it doesn't matter, by the end of the year you decline nearly down to zero. This is why that midnight snack matters, why hitting the snooze button matters, why scrolling for just 5 more minutes matters. Not because any single instance will ruin your life, but because these tiny choices are voting on the type of person you're becoming. Let me tell you about Sarah, a teacher from Portland I heard about who was struggling with her weight for years. She tried every diet, keto, paleo, Whole30, you name it. She'd lose 20 pounds and then gain back 30. It was this exhausting cycle of hope and disappointment that so many of us know too well. Then she learned about the 1% rule and decided to try something radical. Instead of overhauling her entire life, she made one tiny change. She decided to drink 1 glass of water before her morning coffee. That's it, just water before coffee. Sounds almost stupid, right? But here's what happened. That one glass of water made her feel slightly more energized, so she started taking a 5-minute walk around the block. That walk made her feel accomplished, so she began choosing an apple over chips at lunch. That healthy choice made her more aware of what she was eating, so she started cooking one homemade meal instead of ordering takeout. None of these changes felt hard because she wasn't trying to become a completely different person overnight. She was just trying to be 1% better than yesterday. And you know what? 18 months later, she lost 60 pounds. But more importantly, she completely transformed her relationship with food, exercise, and herself. She didn't recognize the person in the mirror anymore, and that's the promise of this approach. If you get 1% better every day after 1 year, you won't recognize yourself either. Now, I know what some of you are thinking because I thought the same thing when I first heard this. That sounds great in theory, but I need results now. I don't have a year to wait. And I get it. We live in an Amazon Prime world where everything is supposed to arrive in 2 days or less. But here's the thing that Americans especially struggle with. We're so focused on the destination that we miss the entire journey. And that journey is where your life is actually happening. Think about it this way. You're going to be alive a year from now regardless of whether you start improving today or not. Time is going to pass anyway. The question is, who do you want to be when that time comes? Do you want to be the same person with the same problems, looking back and thinking, I wish I started a year ago? Or do you want to be someone who's unrecognizable from who you are today? Someone who's healthier, wealthier, happier, more skilled, more confident? The beauty of the 1% approach is that it doesn't require motivation. It requires a system. Motivation is what gets you to buy the gym membership, but it's the system that gets you to show up when it's raining, when you're tired, when Netflix has a new season of your favorite show. Clear teaches us something profound here. This book isn't about motivation at all. It's about designing your life in a way that makes good habits inevitable and bad habits nearly impossible. It's about understanding that you don't need to be a more disciplined person. You need to be a smarter architect of your environment and your routines. And here's the part that really blew my mind. Those tiny 1% improvements are almost invisible in the moment. When you're doing them, they don't feel like they matter at all. You read one page of a book, and you're not suddenly smarter. You go to the gym for 20 minutes, and you don't look any different in the mirror. You meditate for 5 minutes, and your life problems are all still there. This is what Clear called the valley of disappointment. That frustrating period where you're putting in effort but not seeing results. This is where most Americans quit, usually around week 3 of their New Year's resolutions. We expect linear progress. We put in effort and expect to see results. Put in more effort and see more results. But that's not how change works. Real change works like ice melting. Imagine a room that's 25 degrees, freezing cold. You increase the temperature to 26 degrees, nothing happens. 27 degrees, still nothing. 28, 29, 30, 31 degrees, the ice is still completely frozen, and you might think the heat isn't working. But then you hit 32 degrees, and suddenly everything changes. The ice begins to melt. All that effort you put in from 25 to 31 degrees wasn't wasted. It was just being stored, accumulated, compounded, until you hit that breakthrough moment. Your habits work the same way. You might be working out for weeks without seeing visible results, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. Inside your body, your muscles are getting stronger, your cardiovascular system is improving, your metabolism is changing. You just haven't hit that 32-degree moment yet. And when you do, everyone's going to think you change overnight, but you'll know the truth. You change 1 tiny degree at a time. So here's what I want you to understand deep in your bones. Small habits don't add up, they compound. And there's a massive difference between those two things. Adding up is linear. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 3. Compounding is exponential. It multiplies, it builds on itself. It creates momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. This is why people who understand the 1% rule seem to have superhuman discipline. They just have momentum on their side. They've been doing their tiny habits long enough that those habits now carry them forward almost automatically. The airplane taking off uses massive amounts of fuel, but once it's cruising at altitude, it can practically glide. That's what your life looks like when you embrace small habits and give them time to compound. You're not grinding and struggling every single day. You're cruising, and it feels almost effortless. So if there's one thing you take away from this chapter, let it be this. Stop waiting for the big breakthrough. Stop looking for the secret hack. Stop trying to transform your entire life this weekend. Instead, ask yourself one simple question. What's the smallest thing I could do today that would make me 1% better than I was yesterday? Maybe it's drinking that glass of water. Maybe it's doing 5 push-ups. Maybe it's reading 1 page. Maybe it's saying one kind thing to yourself in the mirror. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's so small that you can't say no to it, and so meaningful that it moves you in the direction of who you want to become. Because here's the truth that will set you free. If you get 1% better every day, after 1 year you won't recognize yourself, and that stranger looking back at you in the mirror will be healthier, happier, and more successful than you ever imagined possible, not because of one big moment, but because of 1,000 tiny ones that nobody else even noticed. Forget goals. Focus on systems. Let me ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. What if everything you've been taught about goal setting is actually holding you back? I know. That sounds crazy, especially in America, where we're practically raised on goal setting from the time we're kids. Think about it. In elementary school, teachers ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" In high school, guidance counselors push us to set college goals. In college, career advisors tell us to have a 5-year plan. We graduate, and suddenly everyone's talking about SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. We're told to vision board our dreams, to write down our goals, to visualize success. The self-help industry in America is worth over $13 billion, and most of it is built on this idea that if you just set the right goals and want them badly enough, you'll achieve them. But here's what nobody tells you, and this is going to sound harsh, but stick with me. Goals are actually overrated, and our obsession with them is why so many Americans are stuck in this cycle of temporary success followed by crushing disappointment. Let me paint a picture you probably lived. It's New Year's Eve, and you're feeling inspired. Maybe you've had a couple of drinks. Maybe you're just caught up in that fresh start energy that comes with a new year. You declare your goals. This year, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. I'm going to make 6 figures. I'm going to find the love of my life. I'm going to write that novel. I'm going to get my dream body. And for the first few weeks, maybe even the first month, you're on fire. You're meal prepping. You're hitting the gym at 5 a.m. You're hustling on that side business. You're actually writing pages. You can see it, that future version of yourself, successful, fit, accomplished, happy. But then February hits and reality sets in. You miss a few workouts because work got crazy. You grab fast food because you didn't have time to meal prep. You're exhausted from hustling, so you binge watch Netflix instead of working on your novel. And suddenly, that shiny goal that felt so close is slipping further and further away. By March, you've pretty much given up, and you're already telling yourself, "I'll start again next January." And the cycle continues year after year after year. Sound familiar? It should, because this is the American experience. We're a nation of goal setters and chronic goal failures, and we think the problem is us, that we're not disciplined enough, not motivated enough, not strong enough. But James Clear uncovered something revolutionary that changes everything. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you're focused on goals instead of systems. Now, before you tune out thinking this is just semantic word games, let me explain the difference, and I promise this will change your life. A goal is a result you want to achieve. Lose 30 pounds, make 6 figures, write a best-selling novel, run a marathon. A system is a process that leads to those results. The daily eating habits that make weight loss inevitable, the daily work habits that make income growth automatic, the daily writing routine that makes finishing a novel just a matter of time, the training schedule that makes running 26 miles possible. Here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. Winners and losers often have the same goals. Every single person who tries out for the Olympics has the goal of winning a gold medal, but only one person gets to stand on that podium. Every entrepreneur who starts a business has the goal of making it successful, but 90% of startups fail within the first 5 years. Every person who joins a gym in January has the goal of getting fit, but 80% of them quit by February. So if everyone has the same goals, what separates the people who succeed from the people who fail? It's not better goals. It's better systems. Let me tell you about two basketball coaches to illustrate this point. Coach A is obsessed with winning the championship. He talks about it constantly, visualizes it, puts posters of championship trophies in the locker room, gives inspirational speeches about being number one. His entire coaching philosophy is built around that goal, win the championship. Coach B never talks about winning the championship. Instead, he's obsessed with the system. He focuses on running better practices, teaching better fundamentals, improving team chemistry, studying film more effectively, optimizing nutrition and sleep schedules, refining plays until they're executed perfectly. He measures success not by wins and losses, but by whether the team executed their system. Now, here's the question. Which coach do you think has a better chance of actually winning that championship? It's Coach B, obviously, because he understands something fundamental. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And here's where it gets really interesting and really relevant to your life. Goals actually create some serious problems that nobody talks about. First problem. Goals are at odds with long-term progress. Think about it. What happens when you achieve a goal? Let's say you set a goal to lose 30 pounds, and you actually do it. You hit that magic number on the scale. You celebrate. You feel amazing for about a week. And then what? You stop doing the things that got you there. You've reached the destination. So why keep driving? This is why people yo-yo diet, why they gain all the weight back, often plus some extra. The goal was to lose 30 pounds, not to become a healthy person. And there's a massive difference. I've got a friend, Marcus, from Chicago, super driven guy, always been obsessed with hitting six figures in income. He worked his tail off for years, side hustles, freelancing, climbing the corporate ladder, and finally, at 32 years old, he hit it, made $103,000 that year. And you know what happened? He completely lost his drive. He told me, "Man, I don't know what's wrong with me. I hit my goal. I should be happy. But I just feel empty. Like, what now?" That's the danger of goal-oriented thinking. Once you achieve a goal, you lose the very thing that was motivating you. But if Marcus had been focused on building a system of continuous skill development, networking, value creation, he wouldn't have hit that ceiling. He would have just kept growing, because the system doesn't stop when you hit an arbitrary number. Second problem, goals restrict your happiness. This is huge, and most Americans don't realize they're doing this to themselves. When you're goal-oriented, you're essentially telling yourself, "I'll be happy when I achieve this thing. When I lose 30 pounds, then I'll be happy. When I make six figures, then I'll be happy. When I meet the right person, then I'll be happy. When I get promoted, then I'll be happy." But here's the brutal math. If you have 10 goals and you achieve 9 of them but fail at one, you're going to feel like a failure. That's how our brains work. We focus on what we didn't achieve, not what we did. And even worse, while you're pursuing those goals, you're basically postponing happiness. You're living in a state of not yet, not good enough yet, not successful yet, not there yet. That's a miserable way to live. But when you fall in love with the system instead of the goal, you can be happy every single day that you stick to the system. You're not waiting for some future result to give you permission to be satisfied. You're getting satisfaction from the process itself. You're a writer not because you published a bestseller, but because you write every day. You're healthy not because you hit some number on the scale, but because you enjoy eating well and moving your body. You're successful not because you hit some income milestone, but because you're providing value and growing your skills every single day. Third problem, and this is the one that gets Americans the most. Goals suggest that you can control things you can't actually control. You can set a goal to make $1 million, but you can't control the economy. You can't control whether your industry gets disrupted. You can't control if your biggest client suddenly goes to a competitor. You can set a goal to lose 30 pounds by summer, but you can't control if you get injured, if you develop a health issue, if you're dealing with medications that affect your metabolism. What you can control is your system. You can control whether you show up to work on your skills every day. You can control what you eat. You can control whether you exercise. You can control your daily habits. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you focus on what you can control, the system, you're far more likely to achieve the results you want than if you focus on the results directly. Let me give you a real example that James Clear shares. Imagine there are two people trying to quit smoking. When someone offers them a cigarette, person A says, "No, thanks. I'm trying to quit." Person B says, "No, thanks. I'm not a smoker." Person A is still goal-oriented. They're focused on the result of quitting. Person B has adopted a system-oriented identity. They've changed who they are at the system level. Which one do you think is more likely to actually quit smoking for good? It's person B, obviously, because they're not fighting against a craving. They're just acting in alignment with who they are. Their system, their identity, makes the decision automatic. Now, I want to be clear about something because I know some of you are thinking, okay, but don't I need goals at all? Isn't direction important? And yes, absolutely. Goals are useful for setting direction. They're like choosing what city you want to drive to. But once you've chosen the city, you need to forget about the destination and focus on the system, the vehicle, the route, the driving habits that will actually get you there. The goal gets you into the game. The system is what keeps you playing. Think about it like this. If you're a coach, your goal might be to win a championship, and that's fine for setting a direction. But you achieve that by focusing on your system. Better practices, better preparation, better execution. If you're an entrepreneur, your goal might be to build $1 million business. Great, that gives you direction. But you achieve that by focusing on your system. Daily outreach, continuous product improvement, consistent value delivery, smart financial management. If you want to get healthy, your goal might be to lose weight or run a marathon. Wonderful, that points you in a direction. But you achieve that by focusing on your system. What you eat for breakfast, whether you take the stairs or the elevator, if you pack your gym bag the night before, how you spend your lunch break. Here's what I want you to understand at a deep level. Every Olympian wanted to win a gold medal, but only the ones with the best training systems actually did. Every business owner wanted to be successful, but only the ones with the best daily operating systems actually are. Every person wants to be healthy and fit, but only the ones with the best daily health systems actually achieve it. The goal is the direction, the system is the vehicle, and in America, we've been so obsessed with picking the right destination that we've forgotten to build a vehicle that can actually get us there. We spend hours vision boarding our dream life, but 0 minutes designing the daily system that would make that life inevitable. We know exactly what we want, but have no idea how to become the type of person who gets it. So here's what I want you to do, and this is going to feel weird at first because it goes against everything you've been taught. Stop asking yourself what I want to achieve and start asking what kind of person do I want to become and what would that person do every single day? Stop obsessing over losing 30 pounds and start obsessing over becoming the type of person who doesn't miss workouts and enjoys healthy food. Stop fixating on making six figures and start fixating on becoming the type of person who delivers massive value and continuously improves their skills. Stop fantasizing about writing a best-selling novel and start becoming the type of person who writes every single day, even when they don't feel like it. Because here's the truth that's going to set you free from the tyranny of goal setting. Goals are about results, but systems are about progress, and progress is what actually makes you happy. Progress is what gets you out of bed in the morning. Progress is what makes you feel alive. Progress is what builds confidence, competence, and character. When you focus on the system instead of the goal, you're no longer postponing happiness until some future achievement. You're happy right now, today, because you're making progress, you're becoming better, you're moving forward, and that is the entire point of being alive. So forget the vision board, forget the SMART goals, forget trying to manifest your dreams through sheer willpower and positive thinking, and instead build a system so good, so consistent, so aligned with who you want to become, that success becomes inevitable, not because you achieved some arbitrary goal, but because you became the type of person for whom that success is just a natural side effect of who you are and what you do every single day. That's the difference between winners and losers, and it's been hiding in plain sight this whole time. They have the same goals, but completely different systems. Identity-based habits. Become the person first. Here's something that's going to sound completely backwards at first, but once you understand it, you'll never think about change the same way again. Most people approach habits completely wrong because they're trying to change what they do instead of changing who they are. And that tiny distinction is the difference between transformation that lasts a lifetime and motivation that fades in a few weeks. Let me explain what I mean, because this is probably the most important concept in this entire book. And it's something that Americans especially struggle with because we've been taught to focus on outcomes, on achievements, on external markers of success, when the real power has always been internal, in identity. Think about how we traditionally approach change in this country. We decide we want a different result, maybe a better body, more money, a new skill, and then we try to change our behavior to get that result. This is what James Clear calls outcome-based habits. You want to lose weight, so you go on a diet. You want to make more money, so you start a side hustle. You want to learn guitar, so you start practicing. And look, there's nothing inherently wrong with this approach. It's just that it's built on a shaky foundation, because you're essentially fighting against your own identity the entire time. Here's what I mean. If you see yourself as someone who's not athletic, and you try to force yourself to go to the gym every day, every single workout is going to feel like you're acting out a character, like you're pretending to be someone you're not. It requires massive amounts of willpower, because you're constantly fighting against your self-image. But what if instead of trying to change your behavior, you change your identity first? What if instead of saying, I want to lose 20 pounds, you said, I want to become a healthy person, and then you simply started asking yourself throughout the day, what would a healthy person do right now? When you're standing in front of the fridge at midnight, instead of relying on willpower to resist the leftover pizza, you just ask, what would a healthy person do? And the answer's obvious. A healthy person would drink some water and go to bed. It's not a struggle. It's not a fight. It's just alignment with who you are. This is what Clear calls identity-based habits. And it's the most powerful way to create lasting change, because you're not trying to achieve a different outcome. You're trying to become a different person. And once you become that person, the outcomes you want to come automatic, inevitable, just a natural byproduct of who you are. Let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this. There were two groups of people trying to quit smoking in a study, and when they were offered a cigarette, the first group was trained to say, no thanks, I'm trying to quit. The second group was trained to say, no thanks, I'm not a smoker. On the surface, these seem like almost the same response, right? But the psychological difference is massive. The first group still identifies as smokers. They're just trying to resist their nature, trying to fight against who they believe they are. That's exhausting, and it requires constant willpower, which, as we all know, is a limited resource. The second group has fundamentally changed their identity. They don't see themselves as smokers who are trying to quit. They see themselves as non-smokers, and non-smokers don't smoke. It's not a decision they have to make every time someone offers them a cigarette. It's just a fact about who they are. And guess what happened in that study? The second group had significantly higher success rates in quitting smoking long-term. Why? Because they weren't relying on willpower. They were relying on identity. And identity is so much more powerful than willpower could ever be. Now, let's bring this home to your life, because I guarantee you're struggling with something right now where you're approaching it from an outcome-based mindset instead of an identity-based one, and it's making everything harder than it needs to be. Maybe you're trying to get in shape for summer, but you still see yourself as someone who's not athletic, who doesn't really like exercise, who's just forcing yourself to suffer through workouts until you reach some arbitrary goal. Every morning when your alarm goes off for that 6 a.m. gym session, you're fighting against your identity. You hit snooze because working out isn't really you. You're just trying to achieve an outcome. But what if you shifted your identity? What if instead of trying to get in shape, you decided to become an athletic person, someone who moves their body regularly, someone who enjoys physical challenges, someone who prioritizes their health? Now, when that alarm goes off, you're not fighting against yourself. You're just being who you are. Athletic people work out. It's not a negotiation. It's not a struggle. It's just what people like you do. Or maybe you're trying to make more money or build a business. But deep down, you still identify as an employee, as someone who trades time for dollars, as someone who's not really an entrepreneur. So every time you need to make a sales call, every time you need to put yourself out there, every time you need to take a risk, you're fighting against your identity. It feels uncomfortable, scary, not like you. But what if you became an entrepreneur first, in your identity, in How you see yourself. What if you decided, I'm a business owner. I'm someone who creates value. I'm someone who solves problems for money. Now, those same activities, the sales calls, the networking, the risk-taking, they're not uncomfortable. They're just what people like you do. It's not acting. It's not pretending. It's just being yourself. Here's a profound truth that most Americans miss. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Every single thing you do is either confirming or contradicting your identity. You're not just working out. You're casting a vote for, I'm an athletic person. You're not just writing a page. You're casting a vote for, I'm a writer. You're not just choosing the salad. You're casting a vote for, I'm a healthy person. You're not just showing up on time. You're casting a vote for, I'm a reliable person. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need a unanimous vote. You don't need to be perfect. You just need a majority. If 51% of your actions vote for the identity you want, you win. You become that person. Think about it like an election. If you're trying to become a healthy person and you eat clean for breakfast and lunch but have pizza for dinner, you're still winning the vote 2-1. You're still becoming a healthy person. If you're trying to become a writer and you write for 20 minutes today but skip tomorrow and then write for 30 minutes a day after that, you're still winning the vote. You're still becoming a writer. The problem is most Americans approach it backwards. They think, I'll do healthy things until I lose 30 pounds, and then I'll be healthy. No, that's outcome-based thinking. Identity-based thinking says, I'm a healthy person right now, today, and healthy people make healthy choices. So what would a healthy person do in this moment? They think, I'll write every day until I finish a novel, and then I'll be a writer. No, you're a writer the moment you decide that's your identity, and writers write. So what would a writer do today? You see the shift? You're not trying to achieve something external so you can finally claim an identity. You're claiming the identity first, and then your actions naturally align with that identity. This is why diets fail, by the way. And this is something that the $80 billion diet industry in America doesn't want you to know. Diets are outcome-based. You're trying to achieve a number on a scale, a size of jeans, a look in the mirror, and maybe you white-knuckle your way through the deprivation and achieve it. But then what? You haven't changed who you are. You've just temporarily changed what you do. So as soon as the diet ends, as soon as you achieve your goal, you go right back to being who you've always been, someone who eats emotionally, someone who uses food for comfort, someone who doesn't prioritize their health. And the weight comes back, often with interest. But if you approach it from identity, I'm not going on a diet, I'm becoming a healthy person, everything changes. Healthy people don't eat 3 donuts for breakfast, not because they're depriving themselves, not because they're being good, not because they're on a diet, but simply because that's not what healthy people do. It's not aligned with who they are. There's no struggle, no willpower required, just alignment. Let me tell you about Jennifer, a marketing executive from Denver I read about who struggled with her weight for 15 years. She tried every diet, every program, every pill. She'd lose weight and gain it back, lose and gain, this exhausting cycle that made her feel like a complete failure. Then she learned about identity-based habits, and everything clicked. She stopped trying to lose 40 pounds, and instead decided to become someone who takes care of their body. That's it. That was a shift. And you know what happened? When she was tired after work and thinking about skipping the gym, instead of arguing with herself about willpower and goals and whether she'd burn enough calories that week, she just asked herself, what would someone who takes care of their body do right now? And the answer was obvious. Someone who takes care of their body would go to the gym, even if just for 20 minutes, even if just a walk on the treadmill, because that's what people like that do. When she was at a birthday party surrounded by cake and cookies, instead of feeling deprived and jealous of everyone else eating whatever they wanted, she asked, what would someone who takes care of their body do? And she had one small piece of cake, enjoyed it mindfully, and moved on. No guilt, no shame, no feeling like she broke her diet, just alignment with her identity. Within 18 months, she lost the 40 pounds. But more importantly, she kept it off for years because she wasn't maintaining a diet. She was just being herself, and herself was someone who took care of her body. That's the power of identity-based habits. Now here's where. This gets really practical, and I want you to think about this deeply. The most powerful way to change your habits is to change who you believe you are, and you change who you believe you are through your habits. It's a two-way street, a beautiful feedback loop. You decide on an identity. I'm a runner. Then you prove it to yourself with small wins. I ran for 10 minutes today. Those small wins reinforce the identity. See? I'm a runner. Runners run. That reinforced identity makes the next action easier. Of course, I'm going to run tomorrow. I'm a runner. And the cycle continues. Building momentum. Building proof. Building an unshakable sense of self that makes the right choices automatic. This is why Clear says that habits are not about having something. They're about becoming someone. You don't wake up early to have more productive hours. You wake up early to become a morning person. You don't save money to have a bigger bank account. You save money to become financially responsible. You don't practice guitar to have a skill. You practice guitar to become a musician. The having is just a side effect of the becoming. And when you focus on becoming, the having takes care of itself. But when you focus on a having, when you're outcome-oriented, you're always chasing, always frustrated, always feeling like you're not there yet. Let me give you the framework Clear uses to build identity-based habits, because this is incredibly practical. Step 1. Decide the type of person you want to be. Not what you want to achieve, but who you want to become. Do you want to be healthy, creative, reliable, knowledgeable, organized, calm, confident? Pick the identity that resonates with you, that feels aligned with your deepest values. Step 2. Prove it to yourself with small wins. This is crucial. You can't just declare an identity and expect your brain to believe you. Your brain needs evidence, and every tiny habit is a piece of evidence. If you want to be a reader, read 1 page. That's evidence. If you want to be organized, make your bed. That's evidence. If you want to be healthy, drink a glass of water. That's evidence. Each small action is a vote for your new identity, and as those votes accumulate, your self-image shifts. You start to believe it because you have proof. Step 3. Let that identity drive your decisions. Once you collect enough evidence, once you cast enough votes, your identity becomes a filter through which you make choices. You don't need motivation or willpower anymore because you're just asking, what would a person like me do? And acting accordingly. A writer writes. A healthy person chooses the stairs. An organized person puts things back where they belong. A confident person speaks up in meetings. It's not a struggle. It's just who you are. Here's something that blew my mind when I first understood it. In America, we're obsessed with fake it till you make it, right? Act confident until you feel confident. Act successful until you become successful. And there's some truth to that, but it's incomplete. The real formula is, be it until you believe it. Don't fake being a runner. Be a runner by running, even if it's just for 5 minutes. Don't fake being organized. Be organized by organizing 1 drawer. Don't fake being creative. Be creative by creating 1 thing, even if it's terrible. Your identity isn't formed by what you say or what you think or what you wish. It's formed by what you do, repeatedly, consistently, until the evidence is undeniable. And here's the part that's going to challenge everything you believe about yourself. Your current identity, the person you are right now, was formed the exact same way. You think you're not a morning person? That's only because you've cast thousands of votes for that identity by hitting snooze, by staying up late, by telling yourself and others, I'm just not a morning person. You think you're bad with money? That only because you've cast thousands of votes for that identity through impulsive purchases, through avoiding your bank statements, through saying, I'm just bad with money. You think you're not creative? That's only because you've cast thousands of votes for that identity by not creating things, by consuming instead of producing, by telling yourself, I'm just not creative. But here's empowering truth. If your identity was built vote by vote, habit by habit, it can be rebuilt the exact same way. You're not stuck being who you are. You're not destined to stay the same forever. Every single action you take today is an opportunity to cast a new vote, to move toward a new identity, to become a different person. The smoker who says, I'm not a smoker, is casting a vote for a new identity. The person who's been sedentary for 20 years but goes for a 5-minute walk is casting a vote for I'm active. The person who's been terrible with money but transfers $5 to savings is casting a vote for I'm financially responsible. Each vote might feel insignificant in the moment, but votes compound, they accumulate, they create momentum, and eventually they create an undeniable new reality about who you are. So here's what I want you to do right now, today. Stop asking yourself what I want to have and start asking, who do I want to be? Stop focusing on outcomes and start focusing on identity. Stop trying to achieve different results and start trying to become a different person. Because the most powerful form of intrinsic motivation is when a habit becomes part of your identity. When it's not something you do, it's something you are. When you're proud to identify as a healthy person, as a reader, as an artist, as an entrepreneur, as someone who keeps their word, you'll move heaven and earth to maintain that identity. You will protect it fiercely because it's not just a habit anymore, it's who you are. And we will do almost anything to act in alignment with who we believe ourselves to be. That's human nature. And once you understand that, once you harness that, you unlock a level of motivation and consistency that willpower could never provide. So decide who you want to be. Cast your first vote today through one tiny action, and then cast another vote tomorrow, and another the day after that, knowing that each vote is building undeniable evidence of your new identity, knowing that you're not just changing what you do, you're changing who you are, and that is the most powerful transformation possible, because the most powerful way to change your habits is to change who you believe you are, and once you believe you're a different person, a better person, the person you've always wanted to be, everything else falls into place. Not through force or struggle or willpower, but through simple, natural alignment with your truest self. The habit loop. Cue, craving, response, reward. All right, let's talk about something that's controlling your life right now, in this very moment. And you probably don't even realize it. And once you understand this, you're going to see it everywhere, in everything you do, every decision you make, every impulse you follow. And more importantly, you're going to understand exactly how to hack it to build a life you actually want instead of the life your autopilot is creating for you. What I'm talking about is the habit loop. And this is the secret operating system that runs about 40 to 50% of everything you do every single day without you even thinking about it. James Clear breaks this down into 4 simple steps that every single habit, whether good or bad, follows without exception. Cue, craving, response, and reward. And here's what's beautiful about this framework. Once you understand these 4 steps, you can reverse engineer any habit you want to build, and you can dismantle any habit you want to break, because all habits, every single one, follow this exact same pattern. Let me start by explaining each step, and I'm going to use examples that every American can relate to because we're all living to the same habit loops every single day. We just never had the language to describe what's happening to us. The first step is a cue, and this is a trigger that initiates a behavior. It's the thing that kicks the entire process into motion. Think about your smartphone right now. It's probably within arm's reach, isn't it? Maybe it's in your pocket. Maybe it's sitting on the table next to you. Maybe you're literally holding it right now while you're listening to this. Now imagine it vibrates, that little buzz, or you hear that notification ding. What happens in your brain? That vibration or that sound is a cue. It's a trigger that sets off a chain reaction you're about to see play out thousands of times in your life once you start paying attention. The second step is the craving, and this is where things get interesting, because the cue itself isn't what you want. You don't actually want the vibration or the sound. What you want is what that cue predicts. When your phone vibrates, what you're really craving is the information, the connection, the dopamine hit of seeing what someone said to you, who liked your post, what news just broke, who needs you, who's thinking about you. You're craving the feeling that you matter, that you're connected, that you're not missing out on something important. That craving is a motivational force behind every habit. It's a desire for a change in state, and here's the key. Different people can experience the same cue, but have completely different cravings. If you're anxious about work, that phone vibration might trigger a craving to avoid stress, to escape into distraction. If you're lonely, that same vibration might trigger a craving for connection, for validation. If you're bored, it might trigger a craving for stimulation, for entertainment. The cue is the same, but the craving, the meaning your brain assigns to that cue, is unique to you and your current emotional state. The third step is the response, and this is the actual habit you perform, the behavior, the action. In our phone example, the response is picking up your phone and checking that notification. You might unlock your screen, swipe to see your messages, open Instagram, check your email, whatever the specific action is. That's the response. And here's something crucial. The response only happens if you're capable of doing it and if you're motivated enough. If your phone is in another room, you might not respond to the cue because it requires too much effort. If you're in the middle of an important conversation, you might not respond because your motivation to check your phone is lower than your motivation to stay engaged with the person in front of you. The response is where the rubber meets the road. It's where the habit actually happens. And finally, the fourth step is a reward, and this is the goal of every habit. It's the benefit you gain from doing the behavior. When you check your phone, maybe you see a text from a friend and you feel connected. Maybe you see a like on your photo and you feel validated. Maybe you see a news headline and you feel informed. Maybe you see nothing important and you feel relieved that you're not missing anything. The reward satisfies your craving, at least temporarily, and it teaches your brain, hey, this was worth doing. Remember this. Next time you feel this cue, do this response again because it works. The reward serves two purposes. It satisfies you in the moment, and it teaches you to remember this pattern for the future. Now here's where it gets really powerful and a little scary. This loop happens so fast, so automatically that you're barely aware it's happening. The cue triggers a craving. The craving triggers a response. The response delivers a reward, and the reward reinforces a cue, and the loop spins faster and faster until it becomes completely automatic. You don't think, my phone just vibrated, I'm craving connection, I will perform the action of checking it, I will receive the reward of satisfaction. You just do it instantly, reflexively, like breathing. Let me give you another example that every American can relate to. Netflix. You come home after a long day of work. You're exhausted, you're stressed. You flop down on your couch. You see your TV remote sitting on the coffee table. There's your cue. The remote is the trigger that kicks everything off. Then comes a craving. What you're actually craving isn't the remote itself. You're craving relaxation, escape, entertainment, the feeling of turning your brain off and being transported into someone else's story. You're craving that state change from stressed to relaxed, from bored to engaged. The response is picking up the remote, turning on the TV, opening Netflix, scrolling through options, picking a show, pressing play. That's the actual behavior, the habit in action. And the reward? For the next 30 minutes or 3 hours, depending on how deep you fall into the binge-watching hole, you get exactly what you craved. You're relaxed, you're entertained, you're not thinking about your stressful day or your problems or your responsibilities. You're just absorbed in the story. Your brain logs this. Couch plus remote equals relaxation. Remember this. Do it again tomorrow. And you do. And the habit loop strengthens. One more example, and this one's going to hit close to home for a lot of us. Coffee. You wake up in the morning. You stumble into your kitchen. Your eyes are barely open. You're groggy. You're tired. And then you smell it, coffee brewing, or maybe you see your coffee maker sitting on the counter, or maybe you just walk into your kitchen, and your brain knows what happens in this room at this time. That's your cue, the smell, the sight, the location, the time of day. Any of these could be the trigger. The craving kicks in immediately. You're not actually craving the coffee itself. You're craving the feeling of being alert, the ritual, the comfort, the warm mug in your hands, the mental shift from, I just woke up to, I'm ready to start my day. You're craving that state change from tired to energized, from foggy to focused. The response is making the coffee or stopping at Starbucks or pressing the button on your Keurig. Whatever your specific coffee ritual is, that's the behavior. And the reward? That first sip, the warmth, the taste, the caffeine starting to hit your system. The psychological boost of, now my day has officially started. Your brain feels satisfied. The craving is met, and it logs this pattern. Morning plus kitchen equals coffee equals feeling good. Do this again tomorrow. And before you know it, you can't even imagine starting your day without coffee. Not because you're physically addicted, though the caffeine might play a role, but because the habit loop is so deeply ingrained that skipping it feels wrong, feels incomplete. Now here's what's absolutely critical to understand. And this is where Americans especially need to pay attention, because we live in an environment that's been scientifically engineered to hijack these habit loops. Companies, advertisers, app developers, food manufacturers, they all understand this 4-step process better than you do. And they're using it against you every single day to get you to do what they want instead of what you want. Think about social media apps. Let's say Instagram. The cue, you're bored or you're waiting in line or you're avoiding work or you just wake up or you see that little red notification badge on your phone. The craving. You're not craving Instagram itself. You're craving novelty, connection, entertainment, validation. You want to see what your friends are doing. You want to escape boredom. You want to feel like you're part of something. The response. You open the app, you start scrolling, double tapping, watching stories, checking who viewed your posts. The reward. You get little hits of dopamine every time you see something interesting. Every time someone likes your photo. Every time you feel connected to someone else's life. And here's the genius evil part. The reward is variable, meaning you don't know what you're going to get when you open the app. Maybe there are 50 new likes. Maybe there are 0. Maybe your crush viewed your story. Maybe they didn't. And that unpredictability makes it even more addictive because your brain loves variable rewards more than predictable ones. It's the same reason slot machines are so addictive. You never know what you're going to get, so you keep pulling the lever. Instagram is a digital slot machine, and you're pulling the lever 50, 100, 150 times a day without even realizing it. Or think about junk food. Let's say potato chips. Lay's literally has a slogan, bet you can't eat just one. And they're not kidding. They've scientifically engineered those chips to hack your habit loop. The cue. You see the bag, bright colors, appealing design, sitting on your counter or in your pantry, or maybe you're stressed or bored or watching TV. Those emotional states can be cues too. The craving. You're not craving the chips themselves. You're craving the satisfaction of crunchy, salty, fatty flavors. You're craving stress relief, comfort, pleasure, a break from whatever you're feeling. The response. You open a bag, you eat one chip, then another, then suddenly you've eaten half the bag without even tasting them because you're on autopilot. The reward. That his salt, fat, and crunch delivers immediate satisfaction. Your stress goes down for a moment. Your boredom is relieved. Your brain gets a little dopamine hit and it logs this. Stressed equals chips equals feeling better. Do it again. And the companies that make these products spend millions of dollars in labs with scientists finding the exact perfect combination of salt, fat, sugar, and crunch that will create the strongest possible reward response in your brain. They call it the bliss point, the perfect formula that makes you crave more. They're not trying to feed you. They're trying to addict you, and the habit loop is their weapon. Now, before you get depressed thinking you're just a puppet being controlled by corporations and your own brain chemistry, here's the good news. Once you understand a habit loop, once you can identify the 4 steps, you can engineer it to work for you instead of against you. You can build good habits by making the cue obvious, the craving attractive, the response easy, and the reward satisfying. And you can break bad habits by doing the opposite, making the cue invisible, the craving unattractive, the response difficult, and the reward unsatisfying. Let me show you how this works in practice. Let's say you want to build a habit of working out in the morning. First, the cue, you need to make it obvious. Put your workout clothes next to your bed so that the first thing you see when you wake up, that's your trigger. Set your alarm with a label that says, "Time to get strong." That's another cue. Put your running shoes by the door, visual cue. The more obvious the cue, the more likely you'll notice it and start the loop. Second, the craving. You need to make it attractive. Don't think, ugh, I have to work out. Think, I get to build a stronger version of myself. Reframe the craving from obligation to opportunity. Pair it with something you enjoy. Make a playlist of your favorite pump-up songs that you only listen to while working out. Now you're craving the music as much as you're craving the fitness. Tell yourself you're becoming an athlete, not just exercising. Now you're craving the identity shift. Make the craving so appealing that you actually want to do the behavior. Third, the response. You need to make it easy. Don't commit to a 1-hour workout. If you're just starting, commit to 5 minutes. Just put on your shoes and walk out the door. That's it. Make the response so easy you can't say no. Reduce the friction between you and the habit. If you have to drive 20 minutes to a gym, that's a lot of friction. But if you can work out in your living room, there's almost no friction. The easier the response, the more likely you'll do it. Fourth, the reward. You need to make it satisfying. This is crucial because your brain needs to feel good immediately after doing behavior, or it won't want to repeat it. So give yourself an immediate reward. Maybe it's a delicious protein smoothie. Maybe it's checking off a box on a habit tracker and seeing your streak. Maybe it's taking a photo of yourself and watching your progress over time. Maybe it's just telling yourself, I'm proud of you. You did it. That immediate positive feeling is what's going to make your brain want to do it again tomorrow. The reward reinforces the loop. Now let's flip it and talk about breaking a bad habit. Let's say you want to stop mindlessly scrolling social media. First, make the cue invisible. Delete the apps from your phone, or at least move them off your home screen into a folder that requires extra steps to access. Remove the visual cue so your brain isn't constantly triggered. Turn off all notifications so you're not getting those vibrations and sound that kick off the loop. Second, make the craving unattractive. Remind yourself what you're actually craving. It's not Instagram, it's connection or entertainment or validation. And then remind yourself that scrolling doesn't actually satisfy those cravings long term. It just gives you a fake substitute that leaves you feeling empty. Think about how you feel after 30 minutes of scrolling. Usually worse than before, anxious, inadequate, like you wasted time. Highlight the negative consequences to make the craving less appealing. Third, make the response difficult. Add friction between you and the habit. Log out of your accounts, so you have to type your password every time you want to scroll. That extra 10 seconds is often enough to break the autopilot and make you think, wait, do I really want to do this? Use website blockers, app limits. Put your phone in another room. The more difficult you make the response, the less likely you'll do it. Fourth, make the reward unsatisfying. This is tricky for bad habits because the immediate reward is usually satisfying. That's why it's a habit. But you can introduce immediate consequences. Maybe you have an accountability partner who you have to text every time you scroll for more than 10 minutes, and the shame of admitting it makes the reward less satisfying. Maybe you set up a system where every time you open Instagram, you have to donate $1 to a cause you hate. Now there's an immediate negative consequence that reduces the satisfaction. The key is understanding that the habit loop is neutral. It's not good or bad. It's just a process. A pattern your brain follows. Fire enough times and it becomes automatic. The question is, are your automatic patterns serving you or sabotaging you? Are your habit loops building the person you want to become or keeping you stuck as the person you've always been? Because here's the truth. You're running dozens, maybe hundreds of habit loops every single day, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep. How you start your morning, what you eat for breakfast, whether you check your phone first thing, whether you make your bed, how you commute to work, what you do on your lunch break, how you unwind in the evening, how you interact with your partner or your kids, what you do right before bed. All of it, every bit of it, is governed by habit loops, cue, craving, response, reward, spinning automatically in the background of your consciousness. And the beautiful, terrifying truth is this. You didn't consciously design most of these loops. They were installed by your environment, by your upbringing, by advertising, by convenience, by accident, by whatever was easiest in the moment, and they've been running on autopilot ever since, shaping your days, which shape your weeks, which shape your years, which shape your entire life. But now you know the code, now you understand the operating system, and that means you can reprogram it deliberately, intentionally, one loop at a time. You can look at your life and ask, what cues are triggering me? What am I really craving? What responses am I performing? What rewards am I getting? And then you can ask the most important question. Are these loops creating the life I actually want? And if the answer is no, you can change them, not through willpower, not through motivation, not through trying harder, but through understanding the mechanics of behavior change and engineering your environment and your routines to make good habits inevitable and bad habits nearly impossible. Because once you understand that all habits follow the same four-step pattern, cue, craving, response, reward, you're no longer a victim of your impulses. You're the architect of your behavior. And that changes everything. Make good habits obvious. The power of visibility. Here's a truth that's going to save you years of frustration and self-blame. You don't lack discipline. You lack design. And once you understand this, You'll stop beating yourself up for not having enough willpower, and you'll start engineering your environment to make good choices automatic. Because here's what James Clear discovered and what every successful person intuitively knows but rarely talks about. Environment beats motivation every single time. And the first law of behavior change is to make good habits obvious, to make the cues for your desired behavior so visible, so unavoidable, so in your face that you'd have to actively work to ignore them. Think about it this way. Right now, as you're listening to this, look around your environment. What do you see? If you're at home, maybe you see your couch, your TV, your phone charged on the counter, maybe some clutter on the coffee table, a bag of chips in the pantry, your remote control within easy reach. Every single one of those objects is a cue, a trigger for a habit. And here's the thing that most Americans don't realize. You're not making conscious decisions about what to do next. You're responding to whatever cues are most visible in your environment. And if the most visible cues are triggering bad habits, then that's what you're going to do. Not because you're weak or lazy or undisciplined, but because that's how human brains work. We're wired to follow the path of least resistance, to respond to whatever stimulus is right in front of us. Let me tell you about a study that perfectly illustrates this, and it's going to change how you think about your kitchen forever. Researchers at Cornell University wanted to understand why some people eat healthier than others, and what they found was shockingly simple. It's not about willpower, it's about visibility. They studied families and found that people with fruit sitting out on their kitchen counter in a visible bowl weighed on average 8 pounds less than people who didn't, and people who had cereal boxes sitting on their counter weighed on average 20 pounds more than people who kept their cereal in the pantry. Think about that for a second. The simple act of making fruit visible and making cereal invisible was correlated with a 20-pound weight difference. That's not a diet. That's not a workout program. That's not a supplement. That's just strategic visibility. That's understanding that what is visible is what gets eaten, what is obvious is what gets done. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, it can't be that simple, let me ask you this. How many times have you walked into your kitchen, seen a bag of chips or cookies sitting on the counter, and eaten some even though you weren't actually hungry? How many times have you sat down on your couch, seen the TV remote, and turned on Netflix even though you meant to read or work on that project? How many times have you woken up, seen your phone on your nightstand, and immediately started scrolling even though you told yourself you'd stop doing that? Those aren't failures of willpower. Those are responses to visible cues. And the solution isn't to try harder. It's to redesign your environment so the cues for good habit are obvious and the cues for bad habits are invisible. Let me give you some real examples that Americans can implement today, right now, to make good habits obvious. You want to eat healthier? Stop relying on motivation to resist junk food and start making healthy food more visible. Take that fruit bowl idea seriously. Buy a beautiful bowl, fill it with apples, oranges, bananas, whatever fruit you actually like, and put it right in the center of your kitchen counter or dining table where you'll see it every single time you walk by. Make it colorful, make it appealing, make it impossible to miss. Now take all the junk food, the chips, the cookies, the candy, and put them in opaque containers in the back of your highest cabinet, or better yet, don't buy them at all. But if you must have them in the house, make them invisible, make them require effort to access. The fruit is obvious, the junk is hidden, and guess which one you're more likely to eat when you're hungry and browsing for a snack? The obvious one, every single time, not because you suddenly develop superhuman discipline, but because your environment is doing the work for you. You want to drink more water? Stop telling yourself, I need to remember to drink water, and start making water visible. Get a large water bottle. Ideally one that you actually like the look of. Maybe it's got measurements on the side, so you can track your intake. Maybe the color you love. Doesn't matter. Just make sure it's something you'll want to use, and then place it somewhere you'll see it constantly. If you work from home, put it right next to your computer monitor. If you work in an office, keep it on your desk in your direct line of sight. If you're a stay-at-home parent, carry it with you from room to room. The key is visibility. Out of sight is out of mind, but in sight is in action. You'll be shocked at how much more water you drink when the bottle is staring at you all day versus when it's tucked away in your bag or in the kitchen cabinet. You want to work out more consistently? Stop relying on morning motivation to get you to the gym and start making your workout gear impossible to ignore. Here's what this looks like in practice. Tonight, before you go to bed, lay out your complete workout outfit: shoes, socks, sports bra, or athletic shirt, shorts, headphones, water bottle, everything you need, and put it right next to your bed or on top of your dresser where you'll literally trip over it when you wake up. Make it so obvious that you'd have to actively choose to step over your workout clothes to do anything else. And that visual cue, that physical reminder, is going to make it 10 times more likely that you'll actually work out. Some people even sleep in their workout clothes so that when they wake up, they're already dressed for the gym. There's zero friction, zero decisions to make. The cue is so obvious that the response becomes automatic. Or here's another one. Put your running shoes right by your front door or next to your coffee maker, wherever. You go in the morning so that you see them immediately and you're reminded, oh, right, I'm someone who exercises in the morning. The visibility creates the reminder. The reminder triggers the craving. The craving leads to the response. You want to read more books? Stop keeping books on a shelf in another room and start making them visible in your daily environment. Put a book on your nightstand instead of your phone, so that when you get into bed, the first thing you see is the book, not the glowing screen of Instagram. Put a book on your coffee table instead of the TV remote, so that when you sit down to relax, you're cued to read instead of to binge watch. Keep a book in your car for when you're waiting in parking lots or picking up your kids. Keep a book in your bag for when you're stuck in line at the grocery store. Make books so visible, so unavoidable, so integrated into your physical space that you're constantly reminded, I'm a reader, I read books. And you'll be amazed at how many more books you finish not because you found more time, but because you made reading more obvious than the alternatives. Now let's talk about the flip side, which is equally important. Making bad habits invisible, removing the cues that trigger behaviors you want to stop. You want to stop wasting hours on your phone every night? The solution isn't to rely on willpower to resist a temptation. The solution is to make your phone invisible during the times when you're most vulnerable. Here's a simple rule that will change your life. Never keep your phone in your bedroom. Charge it in another room, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, in a hallway closet, anywhere but your bedroom, so that when you get into bed, the cue for scrolling simply doesn't exist. You can't mindlessly reach for your phone if it's not there. You can't check Instagram one last time if your phone is charging in another room. The cue is invisible, so the habit can't trigger. And yes, I can already hear some of you saying, but I use my phone as my alarm. Okay, so buy a $10 alarm clock. Problem solved. Don't let a cheap excuse prevent you from taking back control of your evenings and your sleep quality. Making your phone invisible at night doesn't just help you sleep better. It creates space for all the other habits you've been wanting to build. Reading, journaling, talking with your partner, meditating, stretching, go to bed earlier. All those things become more likely when the most powerful distraction device ever invented isn't sitting on your nightstand screaming for your attention. You want to stop watching so much TV? Make the TV less obvious. I know this sounds ridiculous in American culture where the TV is usually the centerpiece of the living room, the thing all the furniture is oriented around, the first thing you see when you walk into the house. But hear me out. What if you put the TV in a cabinet with doors that close, so it's not visible unless you make a conscious choice to open the doors and turn it on? What if you unplugged it after each use, so there's a tiny bit of friction between you and watching? What if you removed the batteries from the remote and kept them in another room, so you have to get up and walk to get them before you can channel surf? These might sound like small, silly changes, but that's the point. Habits are triggered by small, silly cues. So removing those cues removes the trigger. One guy I read about literally put his TV in his closet and only took it out on weekends for movie nights with his family. During the week, the cue was completely invisible, so the habit of mindless TV watching disappeared, and he suddenly had 15 extra hours a week that he used to start a side business that eventually replaced his full-time income. That business didn't happen because he found more discipline. It happened because he made the TV invisible and made his laptop more obvious. You want to stop eating junk food? Make it invisible. Don't just hide it in the back of the pantry. Don't buy it all. Remove the cue from your environment entirely. I know that's hard, especially if you have kids or a partner who wants snacks in the house. But at the very least, make those snacks as invisible as possible. opaque containers instead of clear ones, high shelves instead of eye level, back of the pantry instead of front and center. Meanwhile, make healthy snacks ridiculously obvious. Pre-cut vegetables in clear containers at eye level in the fridge, nuts in small bowls on the counter, hard-boiled eggs already peeled and ready to eat. You're essentially competing for your own attention, and the healthy options need to be more visible, more convenient, more obvious than the unhealthy ones, or your brain is going to fall to whatever requires the least effort and thought. Here's something that blew my mind when I first learned it, and it's going to help you understand why this visibility principle is so powerful. Researchers have found that we make about 35,000 decisions every single day, and the vast majority of them are completely unconscious. We're not aware we're even making a decision. What to wear, what to eat, which route to drive, whether to check our phone, whether to sit or stand, whether to say yes or no. All of these micro decisions are happening below our conscious awareness, and they're being driven almost entirely by environmental cues, by whatever is most visible and most available in that moment. So when you rely on motivation and willpower to make good choices, you're asking your conscious mind to override your unconscious programming for 35,000 decisions a day, and that's impossible. Willpower is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day, which is why you can resist the donuts in the morning, but by 8 p.m. you're elbow deep in a bag of chips. But when you redesign your environment to make good habits obvious and bad habits invisible, you're not relying on willpower anymore. You're enlisting your unconscious mind to work for you instead of against you. You're making the default choice the right choice. And that's sustainable. That's how you create lasting change. Let me tell you about Sarah, a nurse from Atlanta, who was struggling with her phone addiction. She was spending 4 to 5 hours a day on her phone, mostly scrolling social media. And she felt terrible about it, like she was wasting her life, like she was missing out on real connections and real experiences. She tried all the willpower approaches. She told herself she'd only check Instagram once a day. She set app timers. She gave herself guilt trips. Nothing worked because the cues were everywhere. Her phone was always visible, always within reach, always calling to her. Then she learned about making habits invisible, and she made one simple change. She bought a small lockbox with a timer, the kind people use for medication or to hide spare keys. And every night at 8 p.m., she put her phone in a lockbox and set the timer for 12 hours, so she physically couldn't access her phone until 8 a.m. the next morning. The first few nights were hard. She felt anxious, phantom vibrations, kept reaching for a phone that wasn't there. But after about a week, something amazing happened. She stopped missing it. Without the visible cue of her phone, the craving simply didn't arise. And in those phone-free evening hours, she started doing all the things she'd been wanting to do, but never had time for. She read 3 books in the first month. She started learning Spanish on Duolingo on her laptop, which she only used for 15 minutes before getting bored and doing something else. She had actual conversations with her husband instead of both of them scrolling in silence. She went to bed earlier. She slept better. She woke up more refreshed. One simple environmental change, making her phone invisible for 12 hours a day, completely transformed her evenings, her relationships, her sense of self. That's the power of visibility. Now, here's where this gets really practical, and I want you to actually do this exercise. Look at the habits you want to build, and for each one, ask yourself, how can I make the cue for this habit so obvious that I'd have to be blind to miss it? If you want to take vitamins every day, put the vitamin bottle next to your coffee maker, so you see it while you're making your morning coffee. If you want to floss, put the floss right next to your toothbrush, not in a drawer, right there on the counter where you can't miss it. If you want to practice guitar, don't keep the guitar in a case in your closet. Keep it on a stand in your living room where you'll see it and be reminded every time you walk by. If you want to meditate, put your meditation cushion in the middle of your floor, so you literally have to move it to walk through the room. If you want to journal, keep your journal and a pen on your pillow, so you have to pick them up before you can get into bed. Make the cues obnoxiously obvious, comically visible, impossible to ignore, and you'll be shocked at how much more consistent you become. Not because you're more disciplined, but because your environment is doing the remembering for you. And then do the opposite for bad habits. How can I make the cues for my bad habits invisible? If you want to stop eating ice cream every night, stop buying ice cream. If it's not in your freezer, you can't eat it, the cue is gone. If you want to stop impulse shopping online, delete the shopping apps from your phone, log out of your accounts, remove your saved credit card information, make it so inconvenient to shop that you have to really want something before you'll go through the hassle. If you want to stop drinking alcohol during the week, don't keep alcohol in your house Monday through Thursday. Remove the visible cue. If you want to stop hitting snooze, put your alarm clock across the room so you have to physically get out of bed to turn it off. And once you're out of bed, you might as well stay up. The cue to go back to sleep is less obvious when you're standing than when you're lying down. Here's the bottom line, and I really want you to internalize this because it's going to save you so much frustration and self-judgment. You're not battling a motivation problem. You are battling a visibility problem. You are not failing because you lack willpower. You are failing because your environment is cueing the wrong behaviors and hiding the right ones. The solution is not to try harder. It's to design better, to become the architect of your own environment, to consciously and deliberately place cues for good habits in your field of vision and remove cues for bad habits from your awareness. This is what Clear means when he says environment beats motivation every time. Motivation is a feeling that comes and goes. It's unreliable. It fluctuates based on your mood, your energy, your stress levels, but your environment is constant. It's always there, always cueing you, always influencing you. And if you design it right, it makes good choices effortless and bad choices difficult. And that's how you win, not through superhuman discipline, but through intelligent design. So go home today, right now, and do an environmental audit. Walk through your space and ask yourself, what am I being cued to do here? When I walk into my kitchen, what's the first thing I see? When I walk into my bedroom, what objects are visible? When I sit at my desk, what's within arm's reach? And then ask, are these cues supporting the person I want to become, or are they reinforcing the person I've been? And then, one by one, make the changes. Make good habits obvious, make bad habits invisible, and watch as your behavior transforms not through force or struggle, but through the simple, elegant principle that what is visible is what gets done. And when you make the right things visible, you become the right person, effortlessly, automatically, inevitably. Make habits attractive. The power of temptation bundling. Here's a question that's going to unlock a completely new way of thinking about building habits. What if you could take something you absolutely love doing, something to look forward to, something that brings you genuine pleasure, and combine it with something you know you should do but keep avoiding, and in the process, actually make yourself excited about the thing you've been procrastinating on for months or even years? This is called temptation bundling, and it's the second law of behavior change that James Clear teaches us. Make it attractive, because here's the fundamental truth about human behavior that the self-help industry doesn't want you to know. You don't need more discipline. You don't need to be tougher on yourself. You don't need to white-knuckle your way through activities you hate. You need to make the habits you want to build so attractive, so appealing, so genuinely enjoyable that you actually want to do them. And the way you do that is by pairing something you need to do with something you want to do, creating a combination so irresistible that your brain starts craving the thing you used to dread. Let me paint a picture that probably describes half the people listening to this right now. You know you should exercise. You understand intellectually that working out is good for your health, your energy, your longevity, your mental health. You read all the articles. You've seen all the Instagram transformations. You maybe even have a gym membership that you're paying for every month. But you just can't get yourself to actually go consistently. Why? Because working out, especially when you're out of shape, is hard. It's uncomfortable. It makes you sweat. It makes your muscles burn. It takes time away from things you'd rather be doing, and your brain, being an incredibly efficient survival machine that it is constantly calculating. Is this worth the effort? And if the only reward is some abstract future benefit like, I'll be healthier in 6 months, or I might lose weight eventually, your brain says, no, that's not worth it. I'd rather sit on the couch and scroll TikTok because that gives me immediate pleasure with zero effort. But here's where temptation bundling changes everything. And I'm going to give you a real example that worked for thousands of people. There's a woman named Ronan, a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, who absolutely hated going to the gym, but loved trashy page-turn novels and binge-worthy TV shows. The kind of guilty pleasure entertainment that you know isn't intellectually stimulating, but you can't stop consuming because it's just so entertaining. So she made a rule for herself. She was only allowed to read her guilty pleasure novels or watch her favorite addictive shows while she was at the gym on the treadmill or the elliptical. That's it. Simple rule. If you want to find out what happens next in your thriller novel or whether your favorite character survives on that Netflix show, you have to be exercising while you do it. And you know what happened? She started looking forward to the gym, genuinely excited to go work out. Not because she suddenly fell in love with exercise, but because she'd pair it with something she already loved, and her brain started associating the gym with pleasure instead of pain. The gym became the place where she got to indulge in her favorite entertainment, and exercise became the vehicle that delivered that entertainment. That's temptation bundling in action, and it works because you're hijacking your brain's reward system. Instead of trying to build discipline to do something you hate, you're making yourself want to do it by attaching it to something you already crave. Now, let me give you examples that are going to resonate with American lifestyles, because we all have things we love and things we avoid, and the key is finding the right combinations. You hate doing cardio, but you're obsessed with true crime podcasts? Only listen to your favorite podcasts while you're running, walking, or on the bike at the gym. Suddenly, you're not dreading your workout. You're excited to hear the next episode of that murder mystery. And the only way to get it is to move your body. Your brain starts thinking, I can't wait to go for a run so I can find out who the killer is. And just like that, you've transformed exercise from a chore into a treat. You keep putting off studying or doing work you find boring. But you're addicted to your favorite coffee from Starbucks, that oat milk latte with extra foam that costs $7 but makes you unreasonably happy. Make a rule. You only get that fancy coffee on days when you complete at least 1 hour of focused studying or work. Now, that coffee isn't just caffeine, it's a reward. It's temptation bundled with productivity. And you'll find yourself actually wanting to study because you're craving that coffee, and the coffee only comes after the work. You hate cleaning your house. It feels like the most tedious, boring, soul-sucking task. But you have a playlist of music that absolutely pumps you up, songs that make you want to dance, that put you in a good mood instantly. Only play that playlist while you're cleaning. Make it your cleaning soundtrack. And suddenly you're not dreading wiping down counters and vacuuming floors. You're looking forward to it because it means you get to blast your favorite music and maybe dance around a little while you tidy up. I've got a friend, Marcus, in Seattle who used this exact strategy, and now he actually gets excited to clean his apartment every Saturday morning because it's become synonymous with his favorite 90s hip-hop playlist. His brain has been conditioned to associate cleaning with feeling good because of the music. You're avoiding meal prepping, even though you know it would save you money and help you eat healthier. But you love catching up on YouTube videos or watching cooking shows. Only watch those videos while you're chopping vegetables and preparing your meals for the week. Bundle the tedious task of meal prep with the entertainment you're going to consume anyway. And suddenly meal prepping becomes your Sunday afternoon ritual that you actually enjoy instead of dread. You keep saying you're going to learn a new language, but you never practice because it feels like homework. But you love your morning coffee routine, that peaceful 15 minutes before the chaos of the day begins. Pair language learning with that coffee. Make a rule that while you drink your coffee, you do 10 minutes of Spanish on Duolingo or listen to a French podcast. And now language learning isn't stealing time from your day. It's enhancing a moment you already love. It's bundled with the comfort and pleasure of your coffee ritual. Here's another one that's huge for Americans who work from home. You know you should take breaks and move throughout the day instead of sitting at your desk for 8 hours straight. But you keep forgetting or putting it off because getting up feels like an interruption to your flow. Solution: pair your breaks with something you're already craving anyway. Love scrolling Instagram? Make a rule. You can only check social media during a movement break. So if you want to see what your friends are posting, you have to stand up, walk around, maybe do some stretches, maybe walk outside for 5 minutes, and then you can scroll for 5 minutes. Now, social media, which was previously a distraction that kept you glued to your chair, becomes a reward that gets you moving, and you're taking regular breaks without even thinking about it, because you're chasing the temptation. The genius of temptation bundling is that it works with human nature instead of against it. Most productivity advice tells you to resist temptation, to use willpower to avoid the things you want so you can focus on the things you should do. And that's exhausting. That's why most people fail, because you can't sustain that kind of constant resistance. But temptation bundling says, don't resist it, use it, harness that desire, channel that craving towards something productive, pair what you want with what you need, and suddenly you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're working with yourself. Let me tell you about a study that proves this works on a massive scale. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania worked with a local gym and created a program where they gave people iPods loaded with addictive audiobooks. But there was a catch. The iPods were locked at the gym. You could only access them while you were there working out. The participants could listen to their audiobooks anytime they wanted, but only if they physically went to the gym. And the results? Gym attendance increased by 51%, more than half, just from this one simple intervention. People who had been struggling to motivate themselves to exercise suddenly became consistent gym goers because the audiobook they were hooked on was locked at the gym. They had to go work out if they wanted to find out what happened next in the story. The exercise became attractive not because it changed, but because it became the vehicle for something they already found attractive. Now here's where this gets really powerful for your life. You can stack temptation bundling on top of other strategies to create compound effects. Remember habit stacking from earlier, where you pair a new habit with an existing habit. You can combine that with temptation bundling to create what Clear calls a temptation bundling habit stack, which sounds complicated, but is actually beautifully simple. Here's the formula. After I do habit I need to do, I will do habit I want to do. For example, after I do 10 push-ups, I will check Instagram. After I send one networking email, I will watch one YouTube video. After I review my budget, I will play one round of my favorite mobile game. After I write for 25 minutes, I will get my favorite snack. You're creating a sequence where the thing you need to do unlocks the thing you want to do, and your brain learns. If I want the reward, I have to do the work first. And because you're genuinely motivated to get the reward, you become genuinely motivated to do the work. Not because the work itself is inherently attractive, but because it's been bundled with something that is. Let me give you a personal example that changed my entire approach to boring administrative tasks. I absolutely hate dealing with emails, responding to people, organizing my inbox. It feels like digital busy work that never ends. But I love this one specific YouTube channel that posts long-form video essays about movies and TV shows, really well-made analysis that I find fascinating. So I made a rule. I can only watch those videos while I'm processing my email inbox. Now, several times a week, I actually look forward to email time because it means I get to watch content I love. And I've gone from someone who let emails pile up for weeks to someone who maintains inbox zero pretty consistently. Not because I became more disciplined, but because I made email processing attractive by bundling it with something I was already craving. Here's another American lifestyle example that's incredibly relevant. You want to spend more quality time with your kids or your partner. You know it's important. You feel guilty when you don't, but after a long day at work, you're exhausted, and you just want to zone out, so you end up scrolling your phone or watching TV while your family is in the other room. Temptation bundling solution. Pair family time with something you enjoy. Maybe you love a certain type of food, so make a rule that Sunday nights are family game night, and you only make your favorite homemade pizza on family game nights. Now you're craving the pizza, which means you're craving family time. Or maybe you have a favorite TV show. Make a family ritual to watch it together instead alone. Bundle quality time with entertainment you were going to consume anyway. Or maybe you love being outdoors. Make Saturday morning hikes a family tradition. You get the nature you crave, and your kids get time with you. Everyone wins. The key is identify what you genuinely want to do, not what you think you should want, but what actually brings you pleasure, and then strategically linking that pleasure to behaviors that serve your long-term goals. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Isn't this just bribery? Aren't I just tricking myself? And look, yeah, but who cares if it works? Your brain doesn't know the difference between legitimate motivation and artificially created motivation. It just knows. This activity predicts pleasure. Therefore, I want to do this activity. And over time, something interesting happens. You might actually start enjoying the activity itself, not just a reward bundle with it. People who start exercising only because they get to listen to their favorite podcast often find that after a few months, they actually enjoy the exercise too. They like how they feel afterward. They like getting stronger. They like the endorphin rush. The temptation bundling gets you in the door, but the intrinsic benefits keep you there. But even if that doesn't happen, even if you never learn to love the hard thing for its own sake, that's fine, as long as you're doing it consistently. Who cares why? Results don't care about your motivation. They only care about your actions. And if bundling cleaning with your favorite music gets you to clean your house every week, your house is still clean, mission accomplished. Here's the practical implementation. Right now, make 2 lists. List 1. Things you love doing. Things you're already doing regularly because they bring you pleasure. This might include scrolling social media, watching Netflix, listening to podcasts, drinking fancy coffee, playing video games, calling your best friend, eating your favorite snack, listening to music, reading celebrity gossip, watching sports. Whatever your guilty pleasures are, write them down without judgment. List 2. Things you know you should do but keep avoiding. This might include exercising, studying, doing boring work tasks, cleaning, meal prepping, practicing a skill, doing administrative tasks, making sales calls, networking, budgeting. Whatever you're procrastinating on, write it down. Now draw lines connecting items from list 1 to items from list 2, finding combinations that make sense. Podcast plus cardio, Netflix plus folding laundry, favorite coffee plus morning work session, music plus cleaning, phone call with best friend plus walking outside, video games plus bike desk or stationary bike. The goal is to create pairings where the thing you want can only be accessed while doing the thing you need. And once you've identified these pairings, implement them as rules, non-negotiable boundaries that you stick to, and watch as your motivation to do hard things skyrockets because you've hacked your brain's reward system. Here's the bottom line. The traditional approach to building habits is to suffer through things you hate until you develop enough discipline to keep suffering through them forever. And that's miserable. That's why 92% of New Year's resolutions fail, because nobody wants to live like that. But temptation bundling offers a different path. Make the hard thing attractive by pairing it with something easy and pleasurable. Leverage what you already want to do in service of what you need to do. And create a life where the right choices are also the enjoyable choices, where discipline isn't required because desire's doing all the work. You're not fighting yourself, you're working with yourself. And that's sustainable. That's how you build habits that actually last. So stop trying to develop superhuman willpower and start getting creative about what you can bundle together. Because when you pair something you want to do with something you need to do, you transform obligation into opportunity, drudgery into delight, and the habits that once felt impossible suddenly become inevitable, not because you change who you are, but because you change how attractive those habits feel, and attractive habits get done every single time. Make habits easy. The 2-minute rule. Here's something that's going to sound completely counterintuitive, maybe even a little insulting at first, but once you understand it, it's going to revolutionize how you approach every single goal you've ever set. The problem isn't that your goals are too small. The problem is that they're too big. And the reason you keep failing isn't because you lack ambition or commitment. It's because you're trying to sprint before you've learned to walk. And what you actually need to do is make your habits so ridiculously easy, so laughably small, that you can't possibly fail. Because here's the third law of behavior change that James Clear teaches us. Make it easy. And the best way to make it easy is to follow what he calls the 2-minute rule, which states that when you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, how is doing something for 2 minutes going to change my life? I need real results, not baby steps. Let me explain the psychology behind this, because once you understand why this works, you'll never approach habit building the same way again. The fundamental mistake that most Americans make, and I've made this mistake 1,000 times myself, so I'm not judging you, is that we focus on the outcome we want instead of the identity we need to build. And we try to jump straight to the end result without establishing the foundation. You want to lose 30 pounds, so you commit to working out for an hour every single day. You want to write a novel, so you commit to writing 2,000 words daily. You want to get organized, so you commit to a complete life overhaul where you wake up at 5 a.m., meditate, journal, exercise, meal prep, and optimize every minute of your day. And what happens? You do it for 3 days, maybe a week if you're really motivated, and then you miss one day because life happens, you get busy, you get tired, you get overwhelmed, and missing one day turns into missing 2 days, which turns into giving up entirely. And now you're back where you started, except now you also feel like a failure, like you can't stick to anything, like you don't have what it takes. But the problem wasn't your commitment or your character. The problem was that you made it too hard. You tried to change too much too fast. And your brain, which is wired to resist dramatic change because change requires energy and energy is a limited resource, basically said, absolutely not. This is way too much. I'm shutting this down. This is where the 2-minute rule saves you from yourself. Instead of trying to build the perfect habit in its final form, you focus on just showing up, on establishing behavior at the smallest possible scale, on making it so easy that even on your worst day, even when you're exhausted, even when you have zero motivation, you can still do it. Let me give you real examples that are going to make this click. You want to become someone who reads regularly. Maybe you got a stack of books you've been meaning to read for years, but every time you sit down to read, you tell yourself, I'll read for 30 minutes or I'll read a chapter. And that feels like a commitment, like a block of time you need to carve out. And if you don't have 30 minutes or if you're tired, you just don't do it at all. The 2-minute version? Read one page. That's it. Just one single page. You can read one page while you're drinking your morning coffee. You can read one page while you're waiting for your food to heat up in the microwave. You can read one page right before you go to bed. One page takes maybe 60 to 90 seconds. It's so easy you can't say no to it. And here's what's magical. Most of the time, once you read one page, you want to read another and another, and before you know it, you read for 10 minutes. But even if you don't, even if you literally just read one page and stop, you've still won because you showed up. You reinforce your identity as someone who reads. You cast a vote for the person you want to become, and that's what matters. You want to start exercising, but the thought of going to the gym for an hour feels overwhelming, especially if you haven't worked out in months or years. The 2-minute version? Put on your workout shoes. That's the whole habit. Not work out for an hour, not even go to the gym. Just put on your shoes. And you might be thinking that's not exercise, that doesn't count. But you're missing the point. The goal isn't to get fit in 2 minutes. The goal is to establish the identity of someone who works out, and you do that by showing up consistently. And you show up consistently by making it so easy you can't skip it. Once your shoes are on, you'll probably go for a walk, and that walk might turn into a jog, and that jog might turn into a full workout. But even if it doesn't, even if you put on your shoes and then take them off, you still showed up, you still honored your commitment to yourself. You still prove that you're the type of person who prioritizes fitness, and that identity is what's going to carry you when motivation fades. You want to start writing. Maybe you dream of writing a book or starting a blog or just journaling regularly. But sitting down to write feels like such a big task. You need the right environment, the right amount of time, the right inspiration, and if the conditions aren't perfect, you don't write at all. The 2-minute version? Write one sentence. Open your laptop or grab a notebook and write a single sentence about anything. It can be about your day, about an idea you had, about how you're feeling. Doesn't matter, just one sentence. That's so easy you can do it while you're waiting for your coffee to brew. You can do it on your phone while you're in line at the grocery store. You can do it right before bed. And here's what happens once you write one sentence. Your brain is already engaged, you're already thinking, and usually you'll write a second sentence and a third, and maybe you end up writing for 10 minutes. But even if you don't, you still wrote, you're still a writer. The identity is being built one sentence at a time. You want to start meditating because you've heard it's life-changing, but every app and every guru tells you to meditate for 20 minutes a day, and that feels like forever when you've never meditated before. And your mind is racing, and you can't sit still, and you don't think you're doing it right. The 2-minute version? Take one conscious breath. That's it. Sit down, close your eyes, and take one deep breath where you're fully present, fully aware, paying attention to the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. 5 seconds, done. You meditated. You're a meditator now. And once that becomes automatic, once that one breath is a non-negotiable part of your day, you can expand it to 2 breaths, then 5, then a full minute, then 2 minutes. And before you know it, you're meditating for 10 or 15 minutes daily. But you got there by starting with something so small it felt almost silly. Here's the key insight that most people miss. The 2-minute rule isn't about settling for less. It's about establishing behavior first and optimizing it later. Because you can't improve a habit that doesn't exist. You can't optimize a behavior you're not doing. And if you make the initial version too hard, you'll never get to the point where you can improve it. James Clear has this quote that's going to stick with you forever. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And what that means is that your big, ambitious goals, lose 30 pounds, write a best-selling novel, become financially independent, those don't pull you upward through sheer inspiration. What actually determines your success is the daily systems you have in place, the tiny habits you execute consistently. And if those systems are too complicated or too demanding, you won't execute them. You'll fall back to your default behaviors, which are usually the exact opposite of what you want. But if your systems are so easy, so frictionless, so simple that you can do them even on your worst days, then you fall to that level. And that level is still progress. That level is still moving you forward. Let me tell you about a guy named Steve, a software engineer from Austin who wanted to get in shape, but had failed at every diet and exercise program he'd ever tried. He'd start strong, go hard for a week or two, then burn out and quit. Then he learned about the 2-minute rule, and he decided to try something that felt almost embarrassingly small. His only commitment was to go to the gym and stay for 2 minutes. That's it. He didn't have to work out, didn't have to lift weights, didn't have to run on the treadmill. He just had to physically go to the gym and be there for 120 seconds. And you know what he did for the first week? He literally just walked into the gym, stood there for 2 minutes looking around, and left. It felt ridiculous. It felt like he wasn't accomplishing anything, but he was accomplishing the most important thing. He was showing up. He was proving to himself that he was the type of person who goes to the gym. He was building the identity. Second week, he started doing a few stretches while he was there. Still just 2 minutes, but now he was actually moving. Third week, he'd do a quick set of something, maybe 5 push-ups or a couple dumbbell curls. Still keeping under 2 minutes officially, but sometimes going a bit longer because he was there anyway and felt like it. By month 2, he was working out for 20 to 30 minutes regularly. Not because he forced himself to, but because a habit was established, the identity was solidified, and the friction of showing up had been eliminated. A year later, he lost 35 pounds and was in the best shape of his life, and it all started with a commitment so small it seemed like it couldn't possibly matter. Just show up for 2 minutes. That's the power of making habits easy. Now, let me address what you're probably thinking. But I don't want to just read one page or write one sentence. I want real results. I want to actually accomplish something significant. And I hear you, but here's what you're missing. The 2-minute version is a gateway. It's the entry point. It's how you trick your brain into starting. And starting is the hardest part. Once you start, momentum carries you forward. The physics principle of inertia applies to humans too. An object at rest stays at rest. An object in motion stays in motion. When you're sitting on your couch, staying on the couch is easy and getting up to exercise is hard. But once you put on your workout shoes, staying inactive is harder than just going for a walk. Once you've written one sentence, closing your laptop feels wasteful, you might as well write another sentence. The 2-minute version gets you over the activation energy hump, and once you're over that hump, continuing is actually easier than stopping. But here's the crucial part, and this is where a lot of people mess this up. You have to be okay with stopping at 2 minutes. You have to genuinely give yourself permission to do the bare minimum and call it a win. Because if the 2-minute rule is just a trick you're playing on yourself where you say, I'll just read one page, but you secretly expect yourself to read for 30 minutes, and you feel like a failure. If you don't, then you've defeated the entire purpose. The point is to make the threshold for success so low that you can clear it even on your absolute worst day. Because the days when you only do the 2-minute version are the most important days. Those are the days that build the unbreakable habit. Those are the days that prove you're committed to the identity regardless of how you feel or what's happening in your life. Those are the days that separate people who dabble from people who transform. Let me give you some more American lifestyle examples because I want you to actually implement this. You want to start eating healthier, but overhauling your entire diet feels overwhelming? The 2-minute version, eat one vegetable today. Not switch to a completely clean diet. Not meal prep for the entire week. Just eat one serving of vegetables a day. Maybe it's a side salad with your burger. Maybe it's some baby carrots as a snack. Maybe it's adding spinach to your eggs. Doesn't matter. Just one vegetable. That's so easy you can't fail. And once eating one vegetable becomes automatic, you can start replacing one unhealthy meal with a healthy one, then 2. But you start with one vegetable. You want to improve your finances, but budgeting and tracking expenses and calculating net worth feels like you need a degree in accounting? The 2-minute version. Write down one expense today. Just one. You bought a coffee? Write it down. You paid for parking? Write it down. You're not trying to track everything. You're not trying to build a perfect budget. You're just building a habit of financial awareness. And once writing down one expense becomes automatic, you can expand it to tracking everything, but you start with one. You want to be more organized, but decluttering your entire house feels like a project that would take weeks? The 2-minute version. Put away one thing. Not clean the whole kitchen. Not organize the garage. Just pick up one item that's out of place and put it where it belongs. One piece of mail, one dish, one article of clothing, whatever. That takes 10 seconds. It's so easy it's almost insulting. But if you do it every single day, if putting away one thing becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth, your space gradually becomes more organized without you ever having dedicated a whole Saturday to cleaning. You want to learn a new skill, maybe guitar or a foreign language or coding, but sitting down for hour-long practice sessions feels like too much a commitment? The 2-minute version. Do one practice exercise. Play one scale on the guitar. Do one Duolingo lesson. Write one line of code. You're not trying to become an expert today. You're trying to become the type of person who practices daily, and that identity is built through showing up, not through the amount of time you spend. Here's another layer to this that makes it even more powerful. The 2-minute rule helps you overcome perfectionism, which is one of the biggest habit killers in American culture. We've been conditioned to believe that if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And while there's truth to that, it's also paralyzing because it makes us think that if we can't do something perfectly, we shouldn't do it at all. Can't work out for an hour? Don't work out at all. Can't write a full blog post? Don't write at all. Can't cook a healthy gourmet meal? Just order pizza. The 2-minute rule says, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing badly. It's worth doing in an abbreviated form. It's worth doing at 1% capacity. Because doing it badly is infinitely better than not doing it at all. And doing it badly consistently will eventually lead to doing it well. But not doing it at all will keep you exactly where you are. Let me tell you about Maria, a marketing director from Chicago who wanted to start journaling because she'd heard it was good for mental health and processing emotions. But every time she sat down to journal, she felt like she needed to write something profound, something insightful, something worthy of being preserved. And that pressure made her freeze up, so she'd just not journal at all. Then she implemented the 2-minute rule. Every night before bed, she had to write one sentence in her journal. That's it. Some nights that sentence was deep. I realized today that I've been avoiding conflict with my mom because I'm scared of her disapproval. Other nights it was mundane. I had tacos for lunch. Didn't matter, one sentence. Done. She'd shown up. She'd honored the habit. And you know what happened? Over time, she stopped judging the quality of what she wrote because she removed the pressure. And once the pressure was gone, she actually started enjoying it. And her one sentence often turned into a full page. But even when it didn't, even when it stayed one sentence, she'd still won because consistency beats intensity every single time. Here's the formula for implementing the 2-minute rule in your life. Take whatever habit you want to build and scale it down to something that takes 2 minutes or less. Exercise for 30 minutes becomes put on my workout shoes. Eat healthy all day becomes eat one vegetable. Read for 30 minutes before bed becomes read one page. Study for an hour becomes open my textbook. Meditate for 20 minutes becomes take one deep breath. Practice guitar for 30 minutes becomes tune my guitar. Write a blog post becomes write one sentence. Notice how these 2-minute versions are just the first step of the larger habit? That's intentional. The goal is to master showing up because once you're there, once you put on your shoes or open your book or sat down your guitar, the rest often follows naturally. But even if it doesn't, you still reinforce the identity. You still cast a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Now, here's the progression. You start with a 2-minute version, and you do that until it's automatic, until it requires zero willpower, until skipping it feels weirder than doing it. And that usually takes anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months depending on the habit and your consistency. Once it's automatic, you can expand it, you can standardize it, you can optimize it. Your one page becomes one chapter. Your one vegetable becomes a full healthy meal. Your 2 minutes at the gym becomes a 20-minute workout. But you don't rush this process. You let each stage solidify before moving to the next, because the foundation has to be strong before you build a house. And the foundation is showing up, proving to yourself day after day after day that you're the type of person who does this thing. James Clear talks about this concept of gateway habits, which are small habits that naturally lead to bigger habits. Going to the gym is a gateway habit that leads to working out. Putting on your running shoes is a gateway habit that leads to running. Opening your journal is a gateway habit that leads to writing. The 2-minute version is almost always a gateway. And the beautiful thing is that you don't have to force yourself through the gate. You just have to open it. You just have to stand at the threshold, and curiosity and momentum will often carry you through. Here's the truth that's going to set you free from the tyranny of your impossible expectations. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And if your systems require motivation, inspiration, perfect conditions, and maximum effort, you're going to fail, not because you're weak, but because those requirements are unsustainable for anyone. But if your systems are so easy, so simple, so low friction that you can execute them on your worst day, when you're exhausted, when you're busy, when you're stressed, when you have zero motivation, then those systems become unbreakable, and unbreakable systems executed consistently create extraordinary results over time, not through dramatic transformation, but through the boring, unsexy, incredibly powerful accumulation of tiny wins that compound into something remarkable. So stop trying to change your entire life overnight. Stop setting goals that require superhuman effort to maintain. Stop waiting for the perfect moment when you'll finally have enough motivation to do the big thing. And instead, ask yourself, what's the 2-minute version of the habit I want to build? What's the smallest, easiest, most friction-free version I can do right now? Today, even if I'm at 1% energy. Make habits satisfying. The power of immediate rewards. Here's a hard truth about human nature that explains why you failed at almost every habit you've ever tried to build. Your brain doesn't care about your future self. It cares about right now, this moment, this second, and it's wired to prioritize immediate pleasure over delayed gratification, which means that no matter how much you intellectually understand that going to the gym will make you healthier in 6 months, or saving money will make you financially secure in 10 years, your brain is sitting there saying, yeah, but what do I get right now for doing this hard thing? And if the answer is nothing, if the only reward is some abstract future benefit, your brain is going to choose the couch and the cookies every single time, not because you're lazy or weak-willed, but because that's how evolution designed us. We're wired for immediate feedback, for instant gratification, for rewards we can feel right now. And this is the fourth and final law of behavior change that James Clear teaches us. Make it satisfying, because what gets rewarded gets repeated. And if you want a habit to stick, if you want it to become automatic, you need to feel good immediately after doing it. You need an instant hit of satisfaction that tells your brain, yes, this was worth it. Let's do this again. Now, this creates a fundamental problem because most good habits have delayed rewards. You exercise today, but you won't see results for weeks or months. You eat healthy today, but your body composition doesn't change overnight. You save money today, but you won't feel financially secure until years from now. You study today, but you won't ace the test until next week. And meanwhile, bad habits have immediate rewards and delayed consequences. You eat the donut, and it tastes amazing right now even, though it'll contribute to weight gain later. You skip the gym, and you get to relax on the couch right now, even though you'll regret it later. You scroll social media, and you get dopamine hits right now, even though you'll feel empty and anxious later. So bad habits feel good immediately and hurt you eventually, while good habits hurt immediately and help you eventually. And your brain, being the short-sighted pleasure-seeking machine that it is always going to choose immediate pleasure and less. You do something to flip the script unless you engineer immediate satisfaction into your good habits. This is where habit tracking becomes one of the most powerful tools in behavior change, and I'm going to explain exactly why it works and how to use it, because this is the missing piece that most Americans don't implement, and it's costing them their goals. A habit tracker is simply a visual record of whether you did your habit or not. It can be as simple as a calendar where you put an X on every day you complete your habit, or a checklist where you check off each habit as you do it, or an app on your phone that tracks your streaks. Doesn't matter what form it takes. What matters is that it provides immediate, visual, tangible evidence that you did the thing you said you were going to do. And that evidence, that check mark, that X on the calendar, becomes an immediate reward that satisfies your brain's need for instant gratification. Let me explain the psychology of why this is so powerful. When you complete a habit and mark it off, 3 things happen in your brain. First, you get a small hit of dopamine. the same neurotransmitter that's released when you eat sugar or get a like on Instagram, because completing a task and seeing visual proof of that completion triggers your brain's reward system. You feel accomplished. You feel like you're making progress. You feel like you're winning, and that feeling is immediate. It happens right now, not 6 months from now when you've lost 30 pounds, but right this second when you put that check mark on the page. Second, habit tracking keeps you honest. It removes the ambiguity and self-deception that we're all guilty of. You can't lie to yourself about whether you worked out this week when you're looking at a calendar that clearly shows you only did it twice. You can't pretend you're eating healthy when your food log shows you had fast food 4 times this week. The tracker forces you to confront reality. And while that can be uncomfortable, it's also incredibly valuable because you can't improve what you don't measure. You can't fix a problem you won't acknowledge. Third, and this is where it gets really motivating, habit tracking creates what's called a visual streak, and humans are psychologically wired to not want to break streaks. Think about Snapchat streaks. People will go to absurd lengths to maintain their streak with a friend. They'll have other people log in for them when they're on vacation. They'll set alarms to make sure they don't miss a day, all because breaking the streak feels like a loss, and loss aversion is one of the strongest psychological forces that exists. We hate losing something we've accumulated more than we enjoy gaining something new. So when you've got a 30-day streak of working out, when you can see 30 X's in a row on your calendar, your brain says, I am not breaking this streak. I am not letting those 30 days go to waste. And that motivation gets you to the gym even when you don't feel like it. Not because you're thinking about your future health, but because you don't want to see a blank space in that beautiful chain of X's you've built. Let me tell you about Jerry Seinfeld, one of the most successful comedians in American history, and how he used this exact technique to become great. A young comedian once asked him for advice on how to get better at comedy, and Seinfeld told him, get a big wall calendar that shows the whole year, and every day that you write jokes, put a big red X on that day. After a few days, you'll have a chain. Your only job is to not break the chain. That's it. That was the system. And it worked because it turned the abstract goal of become a better comedian into a concrete daily behavior. Write jokes every day with an immediate visual reward. Put an X on the calendar. He wasn't focused on writing the perfect joke or getting a standing ovation or winning awards. He was focused on not breaking the chain, and the chain kept him writing every single day. And writing every single day for years made him one of the best in the world. That's the power of making habits satisfying through immediate rewards. Now, let me give you practical American lifestyle examples of how to implement this, because I want you to actually use this in your life starting today. You're trying to build a workout habit? Get a wall calendar or a printable habit tracker. Hang it somewhere you'll see it every day, maybe on your bathroom mirror or next to your bed or on your fridge. And every single day you work out, even if it's just for 5 minutes, put a big satisfying X or check mark on that day. Use a thick marker, make it bold, make it visible, make it feel good to mark. Some people use gold star stickers like we got in elementary school, and you might think that's childish, but who cares if it works? Your brain doesn't know the difference between a gold star and a medal. It just knows it got recognized for doing something good, and that recognition feels satisfying. After a week, you'll have 7 marks in a row, and looking at that visual chain will make you feel proud, accomplished, like you're actually making progress, and that feeling will motivate you to keep going, because you don't want to break the chain. You're trying to eat healthier? Create a simple tracker where you mark off every day you eat at least 3 servings of vegetables, or every day you don't eat fast food, or every day you drink 8 glasses of water, whatever your specific health goal is. Keep it somewhere visible. Maybe a small notebook you carry with you, or a note on your phone, or a chart on your fridge. At the end of each day, you get to mark it complete, and that act of marking, that moment of saying, I did it, I accomplished what I set out to do today, gives you immediate satisfaction, even though the physical results of healthy eating won't show up for weeks. You're trying to build a reading habit? Track the number of days you read, or the number of pages you read, or the number of books you finish. There are apps like Goodreads that let you track your reading and set yearly goals. And every time you mark a book is finished, you get a little dopamine hit. You see your progress bar fill up, you see your yearly total increase, and that immediate visual feedback makes reading more satisfying. Or go old school and use a jar where you put a marble or a penny in for every 20 pages you read. And watching that jar fill up over time gives you a tangible representation of your progress. You're trying to write regularly? Track your writing streaks. Some writers track word count. Some track time spent writing. Some just track whether they wrote it all that day. The author and productivity expert James Clear himself tracks his writing using a simple paperclip method. He starts with 120 paper clips in one jar, and every day he writes, he moves one paper clip to another jar, and watching the second jar fill up and the first jar empty gives him a visual representation of his progress toward his goal of writing every day for 120 days. You could do the same thing with anything. 120 workouts, 120 days of meditation, 120 days of calling a friend or family member. The physical act of moving the paperclip from one jar to another is an immediate, tangible, satisfying reward. Now here's where this gets really interesting and where most people make a crucial mistake. The reward needs to be immediate, and it needs to be aligned with your identity. You can't reward yourself for going to the gym by eating a whole pizza, because that's working against the identity you're trying to build. You can't reward yourself for saving money by going on a shopping spree. That defeats the entire purpose. The reward needs to reinforce the identity. So if you're trying to become a healthy person, your immediate reward could be a check mark on a tracker or a refreshing smoothie after your workout or 5 minutes in the sauna. Something that feels good and also aligns with health. If you're trying to become a productive person, your immediate reward could be checking a task off your to-do list, or taking a 5-minute walk outside after a focused work session, or listening to one song you love. The key is that the reward feels satisfying in the moment and doesn't contradict the person you're trying to become. Let me tell you about a study that perfectly demonstrates this principle. Researchers want to get people to floss their teeth more regularly, because dentists have been telling us to floss for decades, but most Americans don't do it consistently. They tried education, showing people gross pictures of gum disease, explaining the long-term benefits. None of it worked because the benefits of flossing are completely delayed. You won't see or feel any difference for years. So there's no immediate reward. Then they tried something different. They told people floss just one tooth. That's it, just one tooth. And after they floss that one tooth, they should smile at themselves in the mirror and feel proud that they did something good for their health. And you know what happened? People started flossing all their teeth, because once they started with one tooth, they figured they might as well do the rest. But more importantly, that smile in the mirror, that moment of pride, that became an immediate reward, an instant hit of satisfaction that made flossing feel good instead of like a chore. They engineered immediate gratification into a habit that naturally has delayed gratification, and it worked. This is what you need to do with every habit you're trying to build. Find a way to make it immediately satisfying, and habit tracking is the easiest, most universal way to do that because it works for literally any habit. But let me give you some other creative ways to create immediate rewards, because the more tools you have, the more likely you'll find something that works for you. The satisfaction jar. Get a clear jar and some objects, marbles, coins, buttons, whatever, and every time you complete your habit, put one object in the jar. Watching the jar fill up over days and weeks and months gives you a visual, tangible representation of your consistency. And there's something deeply satisfying about seeing physical evidence of your efforts accumulate. When the jar is full, you could reward yourself with something aligned with your goal, maybe a new piece of workout equipment if you've been exercising, or a massage if you've been stressed and using meditation cope, or a new book if you've been reading regularly. The Streak app. There are dozens of apps designed specifically for habit tracking. Apps like Streaks, Habitica, Way of Life, Productive, and they're all built on the same psychological principle. Make it satisfying to maintain your streak. Make it painful to break it. These apps will send you notifications reminding you to complete your habit. They'll show you graphs and charts of your progress. They'll celebrate milestones with you, and they make the invisible visible. They turn abstract behavior into concrete data that your brain can process and feel good about. The accountability partner reward. Find someone who's also trying to build a habit. Doesn't have to be the same habit as yours, and agree to check in with each other every single day. When you complete your habit, you text them done, and they text you back celebrating your win, and you do the same for them. That immediate social recognition, that external validation, becomes a powerful reward. Humans are social creatures. We're wired to care what others think, and knowing that someone else is going to ask, "Did you do it today?" and knowing you'll get to say, Yes, I did, and feel their pride in you. That's incredibly motivating and immediately satisfying. The physical token. Some people use physical objects to track habits. There's a guy who wanted to make 100 sales calls, and he put 100 pennies in his left pocket. And every time he made a call, he moved 1 penny to his right pocket. And he couldn't end his workday until his left pocket was empty and his right pocket had all 100 pennies. The physical act of moving the penny from pocket to pocket was an immediate, satisfying reward for completing the behavior. You could do this with anything: workout reps, glasses of water, minutes of meditation. The physical movement of the object from one place to another creates a tangible sense of progress. Now here's something crucial that James Clear emphasizes, and that most Americans miss: never miss twice. This is the rule that will save you when you inevitably break your streak, because you will break it. Life happens, you get sick, you travel, you have a family emergency. Something will interrupt your perfect chain. And when that happens, most people completely give up. They think, well, I broke my streak. Might as well quit entirely. I failed. But that's the wrong mindset. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit, a habit of not doing the thing. So the rule is, it's okay to miss one day. Don't beat yourself up. Don't abandon a habit. Just make absolutely sure you get back on track the next day. If you miss your workout on Monday, that's fine. But you better work out on Tuesday. Because if you skip Monday and Tuesday, now you're creating a pattern of skipping, and patterns become habits. This is where habit tracking actually becomes even more valuable, because when you look at your tracker and see 1 blank space, it's a reminder. Don't let there be 2 blank spaces in a row. That 1 blank space isn't failure. It's just a blip. It's barely noticeable in a long chain of X's, but 2 blank spaces in a row starts to break the chain. 3 blank spaces, and the chain is broken. The momentum is lost. So use the tracker not just to celebrate wins, but to prevent losing streaks. Let me tell you about Monica, a teacher from Philadelphia who used habit tracking to completely transform her life. She wanted to get healthier, but had tried and failed at every diet and exercise program she'd ever attempted. Then she started using a simple habit tracker on her phone, and she tracked 3 tiny habits. Drink 64 ounces of water, eat at least 2 servings of vegetables, and move her body for at least 10 minutes. That's it. 3 simple habits. And every night before bed, she'd open her tracker and mark off which one she did that day. The first week, she got all 3, maybe 3 or 4 days out of 7. But those check marks felt so good. That little green check next to each habit gave her a tiny hit of dopamine, a small sense of accomplishment, that she wanted more of them. Second week, she got all 3 5 days out of 7. Third week, 6 out of 7. By the end of the first month, she was consistently hitting all 3 habits every single day, and it wasn't because the habits got easier or because she suddenly developed superhuman discipline. It was because the act of checking them off had become the reward she was chasing, and that reward was immediate. She got it every single day regardless of whether she'd lost any weight yet. 6 months later, she lost 28 pounds, but more importantly, she transformed her identity. She wasn't someone trying to get healthy. She was someone who was healthy. Someone who drank water and ate vegetables and moved her body every single day. And the proof was in her tracker, 180 days of check marks, visual undeniable evidence that she'd become a different person. That's the power of making habits satisfying through immediate rewards. Here's another layer to this that's really important. The reward doesn't have to be big or expensive or external. It just has to be immediate and it has to feel good. Sometimes a reward is simply the act of tracking itself, the satisfaction of checking off a box, marking an X, seeing your streak continue. Sometimes a reward is how you feel after doing a habit, the endorphin rush after a workout, the calm after meditation, the sense of accomplishment after writing, and you can amplify that feeling by pausing for a moment after you complete your habit and consciously acknowledging how good it feels, saying to yourself, I feel strong after workout, or I feel clear-headed after meditation, or I'm proud of myself after resisting junk food. That moment of conscious recognition, that internal celebration, becomes an immediate reward that your brain logs and remembers. Some people use what's called a habit celebration, which sounds cheesy but works incredibly well. After you complete your habit, you do something small to celebrate. Maybe a fist pump, maybe a little dance, maybe saying yes out loud, maybe high-fiving yourself in the mirror. It feels silly, but that physical celebration creates an immediate positive association with a habit. Your brain links a behavior with positive emotion, and what gets associated with positive emotion gets repeated. Olympic athletes do this all the time. You see them celebrate every small win, every good lift, every successful attempt, because they know that celebration reinforces a behavior. It makes their brain want to do it again. Here's the bottom line, and I really need you to understand this at a deep level because it's the difference between habits that last and habits that fade. Success is a product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly be fit or wealthy or productive or fulfilled. Those things don't happen through dramatic overnight change. They happen through boring, unsexy, completely unglamorous daily behaviors that you repeat so many times they become automatic. And the only way to make those daily behaviors stick is to make them satisfying, to engineer immediate rewards into the process so that your brain gets positive feedback right now. Today, not 6 months or 6 years from now. Habit tracking is the simplest, most effective way to do that. It costs nothing, it takes seconds, and it provides immediate visual, tangible proof that you're making progress, that you're honoring your commitments to yourself, that you're becoming the person you want to be, one check mark at a time, 1x at a time, one day at a time. So here's what I want you to do. Pick one habit you want to build. Just one. Don't try to track 15 habits at once because you'll get overwhelmed and quit. Just pick the one that matters most to you right now. Then create a tracker. It can be a calendar on your wall, a note in your phone, a jar with marbles, an app, a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Just something that lets you visually record whether you did a habit each day. Then commit to marking it off every single day you complete the habit. And I mean every single day. Don't skip the tracking even if the habit feels small or insignificant, because the tracking is what creates the satisfaction. The tracking is the immediate reward. Do this for 30 days straight, and I promise you, you'll be shocked at how much more consistent you become. Not because the habit got easier, but because you made it satisfying. You gave your brain the immediate feedback it craves. You proved to yourself that you're capable of keeping promises to yourself, and that proof, that visual chain of X's or check marks, becomes its own momentum, its own motivation, its own reward. And what gets rewarded gets repeated. So you keep going day after day after day. And those days turn into weeks. And those weeks turn into months. And those months turn into a completely different life. Not because of one big transformation, but because of thousands of small satisfying moments where you showed up, did the thing, marked it off, and felt proud. And that daily satisfaction, that immediate reward, that's what changes everything. Break bad habits by reversing the laws. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear, but everyone needs to understand. Breaking a bad habit is just as important as building a good one. Maybe even more important, because a bad habit is like a leak in a boat. It doesn't matter how fast you're rowing toward your goals if there's a hole in the bottom draining all your progress. And the reason most Americans struggle to break bad habits isn't because they lack willpower or discipline. It's because they're using the wrong strategy. Trying to resist temptation through sheer force will instead of removing the temptation entirely. And here's what James Clear discovered that changes everything. The same 4 laws that help you build good habits can be inverted to help you break bad ones. And when you understand this, when you realize that breaking a bad habit isn't about becoming a stronger person, but about becoming a smarter designer of your environment and your life, you unlock the ability to eliminate the behaviors that have been holding you back for years, maybe even decades. The formula is simple, elegant, and devastatingly effective. To break a bad habit, make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. And let me walk you through exactly what each of these means and how to apply them to the bad habits that are sabotaging your life right now, starting with the most pervasive addiction in modern American life, our smartphones and social media. Let's start with making bad habits invisible, because remember, the first law of building a good habit is to make the cue obvious, so the inversion is to make the cue invisible, to remove the trigger that starts the bad habit loop in the first place. Because you cannot act on a craving if you don't notice the cue. You cannot scroll Instagram if you don't see the app icon. You cannot eat junk food if you don't see it sitting on your counter. This is about reducing exposure to the cues that trigger your bad habits. And for most Americans, the biggest source of bad habit cues is the glowing rectangle we carry in our pockets 24/7. Think about how many times a day you check your phone without even meaning to. You're waiting in line at the grocery store, and your hand automatically reaches for your phone. You're sitting at a red light, and you glance at your phone. You're having a conversation with someone, and you feel your phone buzz in your pocket, and suddenly half your attention is on wondering who texted you instead of on the person in front of you. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're scrolling through notifications. These aren't conscious decisions. They're responses to cues. And the cue is the visibility of the phone, the accessibility of the apps, the notifications that ping and vibrate and demand your attention. So how do you make this invisible? Step 1, and this is non-negotiable if you're serious about breaking phone addiction. Delete social media apps from your phone. And I can already hear the objections. But I need Instagram for my business. But I need Facebook to stay in touch with family. But I need Twitter to stay informed. And my response is, no, you don't, or at least you don't need them on your phone with instant 24/7 access. You can check them on your computer at designated times. You can schedule posts without having the app on your phone. You can stay in touch with family through text messages or phone calls like we did for decades before social media existed. The point is that having these apps on your phone makes them too visible, too accessible, too easy to mindlessly open 50 times a day. So delete them, make them invisible from your daily environment, and watch how dramatically your usage drops. Not because you suddenly don't want to use social media, but because the cue has been removed, the trigger is gone, and without the trigger, the habit can't start. Step 2. Turn off all notifications except for actual phone calls and text messages from real humans. No app notifications, no email notifications, no news notifications, nothing that pings or buzzes or puts a little red badge on your screen demanding your attention. Because every notification is a cue, a trigger that interrupts whatever you're doing and redirects your attention to your phone. The average American gets 63.5 notifications per day. That's 63.5 interruptions. 63.5 cues to pick up your phone and fall into scroll hole. And research shows that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain focus after an interruption. So if you're getting interrupted 63 times a day, you're never actually focused on anything. You're living in a constant state of fractured attention. Turn off the notifications, make those cues invisible, and reclaim your attention. Step 3. Create physical distance between you and your phone. Make it literally invisible by putting it in another room when you're working, when you're eating, when you're spending time with family, when you're sleeping. The visibility principle works both ways. What is visible gets done, and what is invisible gets forgotten. If your phone is in your bedroom, you'll check it before bed and first thing in the morning. If your phone is on your desk while you're working, you'll glance at it every few minutes. But if your phone is in another room, in a drawer in your car, some of you can't see it, the cue doesn't exist, and you'll be shocked at how much less you think about it. One guy I read about bought a small safe with a timer lock, the kind people use for medication, and every evening at 6 p.m. he'd put his phone in the safe and set the timer for 12 hours. So he physically couldn't access his phone until 6 a.m. the next morning. And he said those phone-free evenings transformed his life. He read books. He had real conversations with his wife. He slept better. He woke up feeling more human, all because he made his phone invisible for half the day. Now, let's talk about making bad habits unattractive. Because the second law of building good habits is to make them attractive. So the inversion is to make bad habits unattractive, to highlight the negative consequences, to reframe the behavior so that instead of seeing it as a reward, you see it as a punishment it actually is. Most bad habits are attractive because we focus on immediate pleasure and ignore the delayed pain. We think about how good the donut tastes right now and ignore how sluggish and guilty we'll feel an hour from now. We think about the entertainment value of scrolling TikTok and ignore the anxiety and inadequacy and wasted time it creates. We think about the stress relief of that drink and ignore the hangover and the health damage and the ability to eliminate the behaviors that have been holding you back for years, maybe even decades. The formula is simple, elegant, and devastatingly effective. To break a bad habit, make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. And let me walk you through exactly what each of these means and how to apply them to the bad habits that are sabotaging your life right now. Started with the most pervasive addiction in modern American life, our smartphones and social media. Let's start with making bad habits invisible. Because remember, the first law of building a good habit is to make the cue obvious. So the inversion is to make the cue invisible, to remove the trigger that starts the bad habit loop in the first place. Because you cannot act on a craving if you don't notice the cue. You cannot scroll Instagram if you don't see the app icon. You cannot eat junk food if you don't see it sitting on your counter. This is about reducing exposure to the cues that trigger your bad habits. And for most Americans, the biggest source of bad habit cues is the glowing rectangle we carry in our pockets 24/7. Think about how many times a day you check your phone without even meaning to. You're waiting in line at the grocery store, and your hand automatically reaches for your phone. You're sitting at a red light, and you glance at your phone. You're having a conversation with someone, and you feel your phone buzz in your pocket, and suddenly half your attention is on wondering who texted you instead of on the person in front of you. You wake up in the morning, and before your feet even hit the floor, you're scrolling through notifications. These aren't conscious decisions. They're responses to cues, and the cue is the visibility of the phone, the accessibility of the apps, the notifications that ping and vibrate and demand your attention. So, how do you make this invisible? Step 1, and this is non-negotiable if you're serious about breaking phone addiction. Delete social media apps from your phone. And I can already hear the objections. But I need Instagram for my business. But I need Facebook to stay in touch with family. But I need Twitter to stay informed. And my response is, no, you don't, or at least you don't need them on your phone with instant 24/7 access. You can check them on your computer at designated times. You can schedule posts without having the app on your phone. You can stay in touch with family through text messages or phone calls like we did for decades before social media existed. The point is that having these apps on your phone makes them too visible, too accessible, too easy to mindlessly open 50 times a day. So delete them, make them invisible from your daily environment, and watch how dramatically your usage drops. Not because you suddenly want to use social media, but because the cue has been removed, the trigger is gone, and without the trigger, the habit can't start. Step 2. Turn off all notifications except for actual phone calls and text messages from real humans. No app notifications, no email notifications, no news notifications, nothing that pings or buzzes or puts a little red badge on your screen demanding your attention. Because every notification is a cue, a trigger that interrupts whatever you're doing and redirects your attention to your phone. The average American gets 63.5 notifications per day. That's 63.5 interruptions. 63.5 cues to pick up your phone and fall into scroll hole. And research shows that it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully regain focus after an interruption. So if you're getting interrupted 63 times a day, you're never actually focused on anything. You're living in a constant state of fractured attention. Turn off the notifications. Make those cues invisible and reclaim your attention. Step 3. Create physical distance between you and your phone. Make it literally invisible by putting it in another room when you're working, when you're eating, when you're spending time with family, when you're sleeping. The visibility principle works both ways. What is visible gets done, and what is invisible gets forgotten. If your phone is in your bedroom, you'll check it before bed and first thing in the morning. If your phone is on your desk while you're working, you'll glance at it every few minutes. But if your phone is in another room, in a drawer in your car, some of you can't see it, the cue doesn't exist, and you'll be shocked at how much less you think about it. One guy I read about bought a small safe with a timer lock, the kind people use for medication, and every evening at 6 p.m. he put his phone in the safe and set the timer for 12 hours. So he physically couldn't access his phone until 6 a.m. the next morning. And he said those phone-free evenings transformed his life. He read books. He had real conversations with his wife. He slept better. He woke up feeling more human, all because he made his phone invisible for half the day. Now let's talk about making bad habits unattractive. Because the second law of building good habits is to make them attractive. So the inversion is to make bad habits unattractive, to highlight the negative consequences, to reframe the behavior so that instead of seeing it as a reward, you see it as the punishment it actually is. Most bad habits are attractive because we focus on immediate pleasure and ignore the delayed pain. We think about how good the donut tastes right now and ignore how sluggish and guilty we'll feel an hour from now. We think about the entertainment value of scrolling TikTok and ignore the anxiety and inadequacy and wasted time it creates. We think about the stress relief of that drink and ignore the hangover and the health damage and the money wasted. So to make a bad habit unattractive, you need to consciously shift your focus from the immediate pleasure to the delayed pain. You need to make the cost visible and visceral and undeniable. Here's how this works with social media. Addiction, which is probably the bad habit that most Americans need to break. Every time you feel the urge to open Instagram or Twitter or TikTok, pause for 5 seconds and ask yourself, what am I actually going to get from this? What need am I trying to fill? And be honest, you're not opening Instagram to connect with friends. You're opening it because you're bored or anxious or avoiding something. You're seeking a dopamine hit, a distraction, an escape. And then ask, how am I going to feel after 30 minutes of scrolling? And again, be brutally honest. You're going to feel worse. You're going to feel anxious because everyone else's life looks perfect and yours doesn't. You're going to feel inadequate because everyone else seems more successful or attractive or happy. You're going to feel guilty because you just wasted 30 minutes you could have spent on something meaningful. You're going to feel empty because scrolling is the mental equivalent of eating empty calories. It fills time but nourishes nothing. When you make these costs explicit, when you force yourself to acknowledge how unattractive the habit really is, it loses its appeal, the craving weakens, and you're more likely to choose something else. Some people write down the cost of their bad habits and keep that list visible, maybe on their phone's lock screen or on a note card in their wallet. So every time they're tempted, they see the reminder. Social media makes me anxious, jealous, and unproductive. It steals my time and gives nothing back. It makes me a worse friend, partner, and human because I'm present in body but absent in mind. When you see that truth staring at you, suddenly scrolling doesn't seem so appealing anymore. Here's another powerful reframing technique. Instead of saying, I can't check social media, which makes it feel like you're depriving yourself of something good, say, I don't check social media, which makes it part of your identity, something that people like you simply don't do. I can't implies sacrifice and willpower. I don't implies identity and values. I can't eat junk food makes you feel like you're missing out. I don't eat junk food makes you feel like you're making a choice aligned with who you are. Same behavior. Completely different psychology. And the second framing makes the bad habit less attractive because it's not something you want but can't have. It's something you genuinely don't want because it doesn't fit who you've decided to be. Now let's talk about making bad habits difficult, the inversion of making good habits easy. And this is where you add friction. You create obstacles. You make the bad habit require so much effort that your lazy brain says, this isn't worth it, and gives up. Think about Netflix autoplay, the feature where the next episode starts automatically after 5 seconds, unless you actively choose to stop it. That's making binge watching easy, removing all friction. So you can watch 6 hours of TV without making a single decision beyond pressing play on the first episode. The inversion is to add friction back in. Log out of Netflix after every session, so you have to type your password to get back in. Remove your saved credit card, so you have to get up and get your wallet if you want to subscribe to another streaming service. Unplug your TV after you're done watching, so you have to plug it back in if you want to watch more. Put the remote in another room, so you have to get up to change the channel. These might sound like tiny obstacles, and they are, but tiny obstacles are often enough to break the autopilot, to create a pause where you actually make a conscious decision instead of just following your default programming. Let me give you specific examples for the most common American bad habits. You want to stop wasting money on impulse purchases online? Delete all your saved payment information from every website. Remove all your credit cards from Apple Pay and Google Pay. Put your credit cards in a drawer instead of in your wallet, so that every time you want to buy something online, you have to physically get up, walk to your room, open the drawer, get your card, type in all the numbers, and by the time you've done all that, you create enough friction that you might actually stop and ask yourself, do I really need this? And often the answer is no. You were just shopping out of boredom or stress, and the friction gave you time to realize that. One woman I read about froze her credit card in a block of ice in her freezer, literally froze it, so that if she wanted to use it for an impulse purchase, she had to wait for the ice to melt, and that waiting period was enough friction to stop probably 90% of her impulse buys, because by the time the ice melted, the urge had passed. You want to stop eating junk food? Don't just hide it in the back of the pantry. Don't buy it at all. Remove it from your house entirely, so that if you want chips or cookies or ice cream, you have to get in your car, drive to the store, walk through the aisles, wait in line, pay for it, drive home. And by the time you've done all that, you've created so much friction that you'll probably just eat an apple instead because it's easier. And if you live with people who insist on having junk food in the house, make it as difficult as possible to access. Put in opaque containers so you can't see it. Put it on the highest shelf, so you need a step stool to reach it. Put it in the garage or basement instead of the kitchen, so you have to go out of your way to get it. Every bit of friction helps. You want to stop hitting the snooze button and sleeping through your alarm? Put your alarm clock or phone across the room, so you have to physically get out of bed to turn it off. And once you're out of bed, you're much more likely to stay up because getting back into bed requires a conscious choice instead of just rolling over. Some people put their alarm in the bathroom so that when they get up to turn it off, they're already standing in front of the shower, and taking a shower is easier than walking back to bed. You want to stop watching so much TV? Unplug the TV after every use. Put the remote in a drawer in another room. Require yourself to do 10 push-ups before you're allowed to turn it on. Anything that adds friction between you and the couch potato behavior. You want to stop checking your phone first thing in the morning? Charge it in another room overnight. So you have to get out of bed and walk to another part of your house to get it. And by the time you've done that, you might as well start your morning routine instead of crawling back into bed with your phone. The key principle here is that bad habits thrive on convenience. They flourish when they're easy and frictionless. So you kill them by making them inconvenient, by adding obstacles, by increasing the number of steps between impulse and action. Now let's talk about making bad habits unsatisfying, the inversion of making good habits satisfying. And this is about creating immediate consequences for bad behavior instead of just delayed consequences, because your brain doesn't respond to delayed consequences. Your brain needs immediate feedback. You know smoking causes cancer, but cancer is 20 years away. So your brain doesn't care. What your brain cares about is, does this cigarette make me feel good right now? And the answer is yes, so you keep smoking. But if every cigarette gave you an immediate painful electric shock, you'd quit tomorrow, not because the long-term consequences change, but because the immediate consequences became unbearable. So how do you create immediate negative consequences for your bad habits? One powerful method is accountability, making your bad habit publicly visible so that failing carries immediate social cost. Tell your friends, your family, your co-workers that you're quitting social media or junk food or whatever your bad habit is, and ask them to call you out if they catch you doing it. And suddenly there's immediate social shame attached to behavior, and humans are wired to avoid social shame even more than we're wired to seek pleasure. Some people take this further and create financial consequences. They use an app like StickK, where you commit to a goal and put money on the line. And if you fail, that money gets donated to charity you hate, maybe a political organization you disagree with, or just a cause you don't care about. And the thought of your hard-earned money going to something you despise creates immediate pain associated with failure, which makes the bad habit unsatisfying. One guy I know was trying to quit energy drinks, and he made a deal with his wife. Every time she caught him drinking an energy drink, he had to donate $50 to a charity of her choice. And after donating $200 in the first week, the immediate financial pain became so unsatisfying that he quit. Not because he stopped craving the drinks, but because the immediate consequence outweighed the immediate pleasure. Another method is to create a habit contract, a written agreement where you state your commitment to breaking a bad habit, and you sign it along with 1 or 2 accountability partners who will hold you to it. And the contract specifies the consequences if you break your commitment. This makes the cost of failure immediate and real instead of abstract and distant. Research shows that people are much more likely to follow through on commitments they've made publicly and put in writing, because breaking a written public commitment carries immediate psychological pain. It violates our self-image as someone who keeps their word. Here's a really practical example of making bad habits unsatisfying. If you're trying to stop spending so much time on your phone, set it to grayscale mode, turning off all the colors so everything appears in black and white, and suddenly Instagram and TikTok, and all those apps that are designed with bright colors to be maximally engaging become visually boring, less stimulating, less satisfying to use. And you'll find yourself using your phone significantly less just because it's not as pleasant to look at. Apple and Android both have accessibility settings that let you do this, and multiple studies have shown that people who switch their phones to grayscale reduce their screen time by 30 to 40% without really trying, just because the immediate visual satisfaction is gone. Let me tell you about Brandon, an accountant from Denver who was completely addicted to his phone, spending 6 to 7 hours a day on it, mostly on Reddit and Twitter and YouTube, and he knew it was a problem. He knew he was wasting his life, but he couldn't stop because every time he tried to use willpower to resist, he'd fail within a few hours. Then he learned about inverting the 4 laws, and he implemented all of them at once. He deleted all social media apps from his phone, making them invisible. He wrote down all the ways his phone addiction was ruining his life, making it unattractive. He put his phone in a drawer in his kitchen and only allowed himself to check it during specific times, making it difficult. And he set up an accountability system with his brother where he had to text his screen time stats every night. And if he went over 2 hours, he had to donate $25 to a political party. He hated making it unsatisfying. The combination of all 4 inversions was so powerful that within 2 weeks his phone usage dropped from 6 to 7 hours a day to less than an hour. And he said it didn't even feel hard because he wasn't relying on willpower. He was relying on design. He'd engineered his environment and his consequences so that the bad habit was invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, and the behavior just died on its own. Not because he became a more disciplined person, but because he became a smarter architect of his choices. Here's the bottom line that I need you to really internalize. You'll never break a bad habit by trying to be stronger or more disciplined. You'll break it by making it harder to do than not do, by removing the cues, by highlighting the costs, by adding friction, by creating immediate consequences. And when you do all 4 of these things together, when you make a bad habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, it doesn't require willpower anymore. It just fades away because you've removed the environmental supports that were keeping it alive. Your bad habits aren't a reflection of your character. They're a reflection of your environment. And when you change the environment, the habits change automatically. So look at your life right now and identify the bad habit that's causing you the most damage. Maybe it's social media addiction. Maybe it's junk food. Maybe it's alcohol. Maybe it's procrastination. Maybe it's spending money you don't have. Whatever it is, and then systematically apply the 4 inversions. How can I make the cue for this habit invisible? Remove it from your environment. Create distance. Reduce exposure. How can I make this habit unattractive? List all the costs. Reframe behavior. Focus on the delayed pain instead of the immediate pleasure. How can I make this habit difficult? Add friction. Create obstacles. Require extra steps. How can I make this habit unsatisfying? Create accountability. Set up immediate consequences. Remove the pleasure. When you do this, when you strategically design your environment and your consequences to work against your bad habit instead of trying to fight it with your limited willpower, you'll be amazed at how quickly the behavior disappears. Not because you became a different person, but because you became a better designer. And good design beats good intentions every single time. Never miss twice. The bounce back rule. Here's the most important lesson in this entire book. The one truth that separates people who transform their lives from people who stay stuck in the same patterns year after year after year. It's not about being perfect. It's about being resilient. It's not about never falling down. It's about how quickly you get back up. And if you take nothing else from Atomic Habits, take this. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. And understanding this distinction is going to save you from the all-or-nothing thinking that has probably derailed every goal you've ever set. Let me paint a picture that I guarantee you've lived at some point in your life, maybe multiple times. You start a new habit, let's say working out, and you're on fire for first week. You go to gym Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You're feeling strong, feeling proud, feeling like this time is different, like you finally figured out, like you're becoming the person you've always wanted to be. Then life happens. Maybe you have to work late on Monday of week 2, or maybe you wake up not feeling well, or maybe your kid is sick, or maybe you just had a terrible night's sleep and you're exhausted, and you miss your workout. And here's where everything falls apart for most people. You miss that one workout, and instead of just acknowledging it as a single missed day and moving on, you start spiraling. You start thinking, well, I already broke my streak. I already failed. What's the point? I might as well skip tomorrow too. Actually, I'll just start over next Monday, or maybe next month, or maybe next year when I have more time and energy and motivation. And just like that, one missed workout becomes 2, becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes complete abandonment of the goal, and you're right back where you started. Except now you also carry the weight of feeling like a failure, like someone who can't stick to anything, like someone who always quits. This is the pattern that keeps Americans stuck. This is the cycle that prevents transformation. And it's all based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how habits work and how success is actually built. Here's what you need to understand deep in your bones. Everyone misses sometimes. Every single person who has ever achieved anything significant has had days where they didn't follow through, where they skipped the workout, or ate the junk food, or didn't do the work they said they'd do. The difference between people who succeed and people who don't isn't that successful people never miss. It's that they never miss twice. They have a rule, a non-negotiable policy that governs their behavior. You can miss once. That's allowed. That's human. That's life. But you cannot, under any circumstances, miss twice in a row, because missing once is an accident, a blip, a temporary deviation from your path. But missing twice is the beginning of a new habit, the habit of not doing a thing. And once that habit takes root, you're done. You've lost the momentum. You've broken the identity. You've started becoming the person who used to work out instead of the person who works out. Let me explain the psychology of why this is so crucial. Habits are built through repetition, through consistent action over time, and your brain is constantly trying to figure out who you are based on what you do most often. When you work out 5 days in a row, your brain starts creating a pattern, starts forming an identity. Okay, we're someone who works out. This is what we do. This is who we are. But your brain is also constantly testing that identity, looking for evidence that confirms or contradicts it. When you miss one workout, your brain doesn't panic. It says, okay, that's fine. Anomalies happen. We still work out. We just miss one day. No big deal. But when you miss 2 workouts in a row, your brain starts to question the pattern, starts to think, wait, maybe we're not actually someone who works out. Maybe that was just a temporary thing we were trying. Maybe we're back to being someone who doesn't work out. And once your brain starts doubting your identity, the behavior becomes exponentially harder to maintain, because now you're fighting against your self-image instead of acting in alignment with it. This is why the never miss twice rule is so powerful. It protects your identity. It keeps your brain's pattern recognition system locked onto the person you're becoming instead of reverting to the person you've been. It creates a boundary that says, I'm allowed to be human. I'm allowed to have off days, but I'm not allowed to quit, and missing twice is quitting, so I will never let that happen. James Clear tells a story that perfectly illustrates this principle. He was committed to a strength training routine, working out multiple times a week for months, building the habit, building the identity, and then he went on vacation with his family. And the first day of vacation, he was tired from traveling, and he skipped his workout, which was fine, totally understandable. He was on vacation. He needed to relax. But the next day, even though he was still tired, even though he was on vacation, even though it would have been completely justified to skip again, he made himself do something, not a full workout, just 10 minutes of bodyweight exercises in his hotel room. And it wasn't about the 10 minutes of exercise. It wasn't about burning calories or building muscle. It was about not missing twice. It was about protecting the habit, protecting the identity, sending a message to his brain. We're still someone who works out. Yesterday was an exception. Today we're back on track. And that 10-minute workout saved the habit, because when he got home from vacation, 5-minute walk instead of full gym session. Maybe that's one healthy meal instead of full day of clean eating. Maybe that's 1 page of reading instead of full chapter. The point is that you're showing up, you're honoring the identity, you're proving that you're still committed, and that's infinitely more valuable than doing nothing and breaking the pattern. There's a concept in habit research called habit resilience, which is your ability to bounce back quickly after a disruption. And it turns out that habit resilience is a better predictor of long-term success than initial motivation or even consistency, because everyone gets disrupted. Everyone in life throws them curveballs. Everyone has days or weeks where their routine falls apart due to illness or travel or family emergencies or just unexpected chaos. And the people who achieve their goals aren't the ones who never face disruptions. They're the ones who get back on track fastest after disruptions. The never miss twice rule is how you build habit resilience. It's how you train yourself to bounce back. It's how you create the mental flexibility to say, okay, I got knocked off track, but I'm not going to stay here. I'm going to take 1 step back in the right direction right now. And when you practice that over and over, when you prove to yourself that you can recover from setbacks, you build confidence, you build momentum, you build an unshakable identity that's not dependent on perfection but on persistence. Let me give you the practical implementation of this rule, because I want you to actually use it in your life. First, give yourself explicit permission to miss once without guilt, without shame, without spiraling into self-criticism. Just acknowledge it. I missed a day. That happens. I'm human. and let it go. Second, make a non-negotiable commitment that you will not miss twice. Write it down. Say out loud. Make it a rule you don't break under any circumstances. I can miss once, but I will never miss twice. Third, when you do miss once, make the next occurrence of the habit as easy as possible. Lower the bar to the absolute minimum. Because the goal isn't to perform well. The goal is to show up, to protect the pattern, to maintain the identity. If your habit is exercising for 30 minutes and you missed yesterday, today you don't need to do 30 minutes. You just need to do something. Even if it's 5 push-ups, even if it's a 2-minute walk around block, just something to prove you're back. Fourth, use that bounce back as evidence of your resilience, as proof that you're the type of person who doesn't quit, who doesn't let setbacks define them, who always gets back up, and every time you bounce back, you're reinforcing that identity. You're building that character trait. You're becoming more resilient. Here's a powerful reframe that's going to help you implement this. Instead of tracking perfect days, track bounce back days. Celebrate the days when you mess up and then immediately course correct. Because those are actually more important than the days when everything goes perfectly. Because perfection is easy when everything aligns, when you're motivated, when conditions are ideal, but bouncing back, getting back on track after you've fallen off. That's character. That's resilience. That's the skill that determines whether you'll still be doing this habit a year from now, or whether you'll have quit like you've quit everything else. Let me tell you about Marcus, a software developer from Seattle who was trying to build a meditation habit, and he'd been meditating every morning for 40 days straight, proud of his streak, feeling like he'd finally become a meditator, and then he went on a business trip. His whole routine got disrupted, and he missed his meditation on day 41. Old Marcus would have said, well, I broke my 40-day streak. What's the point? I'll start over when I get home. And then he never would have started over. The habit would have died. But new Marcus, armed with the never miss twice rule, said, I missed a day, that's fine, but I will not miss tomorrow. And the next morning, even though he was in a hotel room in a different time zone, even though his whole schedule was thrown off, he sat on the floor of his hotel room and meditated for 2 minutes, just 2 minutes, because he was protecting the habit. And when he got home, he didn't have to rebuild, he just continued. And a year later, he'd meditated over 300 days out of 365, which is way better than 40 days followed by nothing. And the only reason he achieved that was because every time he missed, which happened occasionally due to illness or travel or life, he made absolutely sure he didn't miss twice. He always bounced back immediately. Here's the bottom line. The truth that's going to set you free from perfectionism and all-or-nothing thinking that's been sabotaging you your whole life. Perfection is not required. Consistency is. And consistency doesn't mean never missing. It means always coming back, always bouncing back, always refusing to let one setback become 2. Because 2 becomes 3. 3 becomes a week becomes a month, and a month becomes, I used to do that. And the only thing standing between you and permanent transformation between you and becoming the person you want to be is your willingness to forgive yourself for missing once and your commitment to never, under any circumstances, miss twice. Winners aren't people who never fall. Winners are people who fall and get up fast, who stumble and course correct immediately, who miss a day and show up the next day without drama or self-flagellation or elaborate justifications. They just get back on track quietly, quickly, consistently. And that's the skill, that's a habit that matters more than any other, the meta habit of bouncing back. And once you master that, once you internalize the never miss twice rule as a non-negotiable part of who you are, you become unstoppable, not because you're perfect, but because you're resilient, not because you never fail, but because you never stay failed. And that makes all the difference. That's what separates the people who transform their lives from the people who stay stuck. That's what turns temporary motivation into permanent change. That's what builds the life you actually want. One bounce back at a time, one recovery at a time. One moment of choosing to show up again even though you didn't show up yesterday. Because perfection is not required. Consistency is. And consistency is just refusing to miss twice, ever, no matter what. And if you can do that, if you can make that your rule, your identity, your non-negotiable policy, then everything else falls into place. The habits stick, the identity solidifies. The person you want to become is who you are, not because you were perfect, but because you were persistent, not because you never fell, but because you always got back, up, and that That resilience, that refusal to let one mistake become two, that's what changes everything. So here we are at the end of this journey through atomic habits. And if you've made it this far, if you've listened to everything we've covered, you now know more about how habits actually work than 99% of people walking around out there. You understand the 1% rule and how tiny improvements compound into extraordinary results. You understand that goals are overrated and systems are everything. You understand that identity-based habits are more powerful than outcome-based habits. You know for laws of behavior change, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. And you know how to break bad habits by inverting those laws, making them invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. And most importantly, you understand the never miss twice rule, the principle that's going to save you when life gets messy and you inevitably fall off track. But here's the thing, and I need you to really hear this because it's the difference between this being just another audiobook you consumed and forgot about versus this being the turning point in your life. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. Understanding these principles intellectually means absolutely nothing if you don't actually implement them. If you don't take what you've learned here and apply it to your actual life, starting today, starting right now, not next Monday, not next month, not when conditions are perfect or when you feel more motivated, but now, this moment. Because the truth is, you're never going to feel ready, you're never going to have perfect conditions, you're never going to have unlimited motivation. And if you wait for those things, you'll wait forever and nothing will change. So here's what I want you to do, and I'm being completely serious. I want you to pause whatever you're doing right now. Take out your phone or grab a piece of paper, and I want you to write down one habit, just one, that you're going to start building today using the principles you learned in this audiobook. Maybe it's reading one page before bed. Maybe it's doing 5 push-ups every morning. Maybe it's drinking 1 glass of water when you wake up. Maybe it's writing 1 sentence in a journal. Maybe it's putting your phone in another room at night. Doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's something that will move you toward the person you want to become. And I want you to make it so small, so ridiculously easy, that you can't say no to it. Because remember the 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. And then I want you to decide how you're going to track it. Are you going to use a calendar and put an X on every day you complete it? Are you going to use an app? Are you going to put marbles in a jar? Doesn't matter. Just pick a method and commit to tracking it, because what gets measured gets managed, and what gets tracked gets done. And then, this is the most important part. I want you to commit to the never miss twice rule. Write it down. Say it out loud. Make it a non-negotiable policy. I can miss once, but I will never miss twice. Because that rule, that single principle, is going to be the difference between you being in the same place a year from now versus being completely transformed. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking, yeah, this all sounds great, but I've tried to change before and it never sticks. What makes this time different? And here's what makes it different. This time you're not relying on motivation. You're not relying on willpower. You're not trying to become a more disciplined person. You're using a system. You're working with human nature instead of against it. You're making tiny changes that compound over time instead of trying to overhaul your entire life overnight. And that's sustainable. That's how real transformation happens. Not through dramatic gestures, but through boring, unsexy, incredibly powerful daily habits that accumulate into results so extraordinary that people think you changed overnight, when really you change 1 degree at a time. Let me leave you with one final thought, one truth that I need you to carry with you as you close this audiobook and go back to your life. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Every single thing you do, every choice you make, every habit you execute or skip is casting a vote. And you don't need a unanimous vote. You don't need to be perfect. You just need a majority. You just need 51% of your votes to be for the person you want to become. And if you can do that, if you can stack up just slightly more good votes than bad votes, day after day after day, you'll become that person, not through force, not through struggle, but through simple arithmetic, through the undeniable mathematics of habit compounding. And here's what's beautiful about this. You don't have to wait to see if it works. You don't have to wonder if you're capable. You don't have to hope that maybe this time will be different, because the science is clear, the evidence is overwhelming. The principles are proven. Thousands of studies, millions of people have demonstrated that this works, that small habits compound, that identity-based change is real, that the 4 laws work, that the never miss twice rule protects your progress. And if you apply these principles consistently, if you trust the process even when you can't see the results yet, transformation is inevitable, not possible, not likely, inevitable, because you're not fighting against human nature anymore. You're harnessing it. You're using the same psychological and biological mechanisms that created your bad habits to create good ones, and that's unstoppable. So a year from now, where do you want to be? Do you want to be exactly where you are right now, having the same struggles, facing the same problems, wanting the same things but not having them? Or do you want to be unrecognizable, transformed, living a life you're actually proud of, having become the person you always knew you could be? Because that choice, that decision, isn't made a year from now. It's made today, it's made right now, in this moment, with the very next action you take, the very next habit you execute, the very next vote you cast of the type of person you're becoming. The rest of your life is a long time, and it's going to pass whether you use it intentionally or not. The days are going to go by, the weeks are going to turn into months, the months are going to turn into years. Time is going to move forward no matter what, and the only question is, who are you going to be when that time has passed? Are you going to be someone who listened to this audiobook, felt inspired for a few days, and then went right back to your old patterns? Or are you going to be someone who actually implemented this, who took these principles seriously, who made tiny improvements every single day, who protected their habits through the never miss twice rule, who became the person they wanted to be not through one big transformation, but through 1,000 tiny ones? That's up to you. That's your choice, and nobody can make it for you. But I can tell you this. If you choose the path of atomic habits, if you commit to getting 1% better every day, if you focus on systems instead of goals, if you build identity-based habits, if you make good habits obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, if you make bad habits invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying, and if you never, ever miss twice, then I promise you, I guarantee you, a year from now you will look back at this moment as a turning point, as the day everything changed, not because you had some massive epiphany or some stroke of luck, but because you finally understood how change actually works and you had the courage to apply it. Perfection is not required. Consistency is, and consistency is just showing up day after day, casting your votes, building your identity, trusting the process, and letting the compound interest of small habits do its magic. And that magic is real. It's not mystical or metaphorical. It's mathematical. It's inevitable. It's yours if you want it. So go. Start your one tiny habit today. Track it. Protect it. Never miss twice. And watch what happens. Watch as that one habit becomes 2, becomes 5, becomes 10. Watch as your identity shifts. Watch as the person you are today slowly, imperceptibly, beautifully becomes the person you've always wanted to be. And when people ask you a year from now, how did you change so much? What's your secret? You can smile and tell them the truth. I didn't change overnight. I changed one atomic habit at a time, and those atoms, they added up to something extraordinary. The rest of your life starts now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. And I can't wait to see who you become. If this audiobook helped you understand how to actually change your life, how to build habits that stick, how to become the person you've always wanted to be, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button right now. It tells YouTube that this content is valuable and helps other people who are struggling with the same issues find this video. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's the one tiny habit you're committing to starting today? I read every single comment, and I want to hear your commitment. Because saying it publicly makes you more likely to follow through. That's the power of accountability. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Bit-Sized Book English and hit that notification bell, because we're breaking down the most powerful books in the world. The books that actually change lives, not just feel-good fluff, but real, practical, science-backed strategies at work. And I'm doing this every single week, giving you the tools you need to transform your health, your wealth, your relationships, your entire life, one book at a time. This channel is for people who are serious about growth, who are tired of staying stuck, who are ready to actually implement instead of just consume. And if that's you, if you're committed to becoming better, then this is your tribe, this is your community, and I want you here. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's stuck in the cycle of setting goals and not achieving them. Someone who keeps starting and quitting. Someone who needs to understand that change is possible, that transformation is available to them. They just need the right system. And this video could be the thing that finally clicks for them. So share it, spread the knowledge, help someone else break free. Remember, You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So build better systems, build atomic habits, and watch as your life transforms in ways you never thought possible. I'll see you in the next one. Now go out there and become who you're meant to be, one tiny habit at a time. Peace. And thank you for listening.